Hello, everybody. Welcome back, my fellow Westorians. It is Season 8, and we are ready to get into the implications of Season 8 for A Song of Ice and Fire. And, you know, I think there's an attitude out there that the farther the show gets from the books, the less we can learn about what's coming in the books. And in some cases, that can be true, but there is still a lot we can learn about the books from this TV show. Just this first episode has a lot to it. There are things that really surprised me. There were things that were surprised a lot of you, I'm sure. And there are some things that surprised Ashaya and Lady Gwyn as well, I would think as well. So, with that in mind, hi Ashaya, how you doing?
Hi there, I'm just all right. We are using our old microphone. We cannot get the mixer quite working when we have guests, and there are a few issues with that.
Your life has really been all about figuring out technology these last several
and
hours
realistically,
or days,
it is difficult for me to man the mixer while on these streams, so it's fine with me to not have to deal with that for these first initial streams that I'm guesting on.
Definitely. Well, we appreciate it, all that work, and it's going to pay off. It already did for our show-only review, and going forward as well. And welcome back, Lady Gwyn. Good to have you here for our book reader reviews. It's been several years of having you as a guest, and we're glad to be able to close it out with you.
Yes, I'm really excited to be here. Only 6 weeks this time, but we have plenty to talk about. And like you said, still plenty of ways that the books can inform the show, and the show can tell us things or hint at things to come in the book. So lots to talk about. Yeah,
sometimes it just puts us on the right track. Even if it's not the same thing, it raised possibilities that we maybe hadn't considered. I don't know about y'all, but I had never really considered too seriously the idea that Sam would be the one to tell Jon until, last season when he's the one who found the information at the Citadel. But say 2 or 3 years ago, it hardly occurred to me at all. I don't know about y'all, but that's just one example.
Yeah. No, not really. Even last year, I still thought it might be Bran.
Yeah. Oh, we figured Bran had to be involved somehow,
right.
But
and he was involved still.
Yeah, he was more, and in a way that we really didn't see coming. Like the way Bran is getting involved is really like wow. And you got to think there's a strong possibility this is how George told them he had planned it. So we'll be getting into that. We're not going to start off with Bran and the parentage reveal, but we will obviously be talking about it. It's a pretty big deal.
Let's just not talk about it.
Let's skip it entirely? Skip it. I mean, Lady Gwyn and I already have it covered, right? We're wearing the same shirt today. Now, it's funny because we had a stream on Saturday called And Now It Begins. And I didn't wear this Now It Ends shirt, which is a pretty big fail on my part. Now it's a double fail because it's this domino effect of failure because now we're both wearing the same shirt. Actually, it's kind of cool that we're wearing the same shirt.
Totally unplanned, I swear. We weren't trying to be twinsies.
This is like the castle design. We're rooks and Ashaya is the queen, so that's cool. Yeah.
Hey, we're just going to start playing wizard chess any minute now.
Yeah, we'll spin this some way so it works out. Yeah. It's even the same color. Wait, no, is that the blue one? I have the gray one.
Blue.
Okay, cool. I thought we even had the same color, but anyway. Well, shout out to Jenny Slife for the Now It Ends shirt that we are both wearing.
My favorite.
For people who are not watching, we're not actually wearing the same shirt, like literally like sharing a shirt. I mean, it's a copy, yeah.
That would be some trick.
That would be, especially considering that you are in the Boston area and I'm in the Atlanta area. That would be some shirt. Yeah, that is high technology.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a couple of super chats. We got from Conbio Yacker. That's an interesting name. Will Dawn or any Valyrian blades appear in season 8? Well, what do you guys think? I think that the show hasn't really made a big deal out of Valyrian steel.
No, they really haven't. I mean, Arya does have her Valyrian steel dagger, and Jon has his, and they did make somewhat of a fuss about that.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, not super major. I mean, we will see Jorah. Maybe interact more with that. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. What do you think, Lady Gwyn?
Well, Sam mentions having Heartsbane.
Yeah,
that's true.
So, I mean, they're mentioning them. So they've mentioned 3 different weapons in that first episode, I guess.
That's true. One other clue maybe is, I talked about this briefly on the show only review on Monday, and that was to mention that Gendry said, I'm getting better at this, which maybe it's reading too much into it, that it's going to lead to him doing more fancy things, but that's with Dragonglass, not necessarily with. But we do know the elements are there because he worked with Tabo Mott, and Sam has books. Maybe Sam has a book that tells him what to do. I'm
curious, they also say that, when they're loading the Dragonglass out, they're like, is this the last of the wagons? Yeah, it is. That's just maybe this load that they brought with them, because there's a whole lot more.
Yeah.
But obviously with the imminent threat coming to Winterfell, hopefully they don't just lose their entire cache of Dragonglass right away.
I hadn't thought of that. That's a really interesting
I don't think
idea.
they could possibly have mined Dragonstone.
Like completely.
Yeah, they just got enough. They were like, let's take this.
That's an interesting idea. I hadn't considered them losing their Dragonglass allocation or whatever you want to call it. Their stash seems
Dragonstone.
Stash seems too small for the amount of. It doesn't seem like the right word. So let's see a couple other intro stuff before we get to the rest of these questions. Definitely want to give a quick mention of the collaboration that we did with Lady Gwyn and Radio Westeros. The Dance of the Dragons Part 1 is out. It's maybe an odd time for it to come out right in the midst of Season 8 excitement, but it's there and it'll be there.
We're about to see some dragon dancing.
That's right. We are going to see some. I think so. Yeah. So I think we're pretty happy with Part 1, and there'll be more parts coming after the season. So keep an eye out for those. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, well, it's not going anywhere, but check it out soon if you can. Let's see. Also, let's give some shout outs to some patrons. We're doing our patron shout outs a little different for the season because the episodes are going to be longer. We need to try to conserve time. But definitely going to give shout outs where they're deserved. We're just not going to double up as much as we were before. So with that in mind, thanks to Jeff Gnarly the Long Snapper, History of Westeros' first sword, who I think would be right up front with Grey Worm and the Unsullied in this battle if it were a real battle. And thanks to Dragon Rider patrons, Talanis the Talon, King of Gagassos, rider of Talarius, the red dragon with scales, horns, and talons of midnight black, and Robert IV of House Ardeacor, Burn King of Blazewater Bay, rider of Atraxis, the black dragon with bioluminescent spots like smoldering embers, and a banded blue tail. We have lots of Patreon bonuses you can get for as little as $1 a month. You can get our special episodes. We have 3 bonus episodes that are available to patrons only. At the end of the season, those are going to go up to $5 a month. However, if you were already a patron, no worries. You'll be able to have access to the episodes, even if you maintain your patronage at whatever level it's at now. So, no worries. Existing patrons, you will be grandfathered in, so to speak. No, you will not lose access to those episodes. Okay. I don't think I have any other announcements, so let's get back to these early questions and then get into the review itself. First off here, are there any plans for History of Westeros merch? Yeah, we've tried and kind of gone back and forth with that.
We don't know what is the best service to have them printed that gives us the best percentage while also not making us just fulfilling orders all the time, let alone the design we would have. If you go to our website, historyofwesteros.com, and look at the little just text logo in red, History of Westeros at the top, let us know if you would wear a shirt that just says that, and I feel like people would, but we still don't know the best option. So that's about where we are. We do have con beard like ribbons. So if you see us at conventions, you can get one of those that say History of Westeros and business cards.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe one day we're maybe mugs and shirts are in the one of these days. But yeah, it is a big thing to get into. It's a lot of effort and yeah, it's kind of a pain. I know you guys, Lady Gwyn, you guys. I was reminded of your shirts because I wore my Radio Westeros shirt on Monday.
Every time you wear it, you just get inundated with, where can I get this
And I'm like,
shirt?
I got the shirt years ago, and I don't think they have them anymore.
Yeah, well, actually, we just make them. We don't have a stash of them, but we make them like one at a time. Custom ink will do.
Oh,
whatever.
Well then, now people know.
So we have shirts, but like you, we've looked into other things, and it's tough to find that like a full merchandise.
It went from basically the industry kind of went from there weren't a lot of great ways to do it without having to do a lot of work yourself to a lot of ways to do it.
Too many options.
And too many. Yeah, there's just so many Shopify, and there's just options through Patreon. There's options through YouTube.
Yeah.
There's just so much. Yeah, and we one of these days, but it's just
it's a whole thing.
I kind of don't wanna. That's the best way to put it. I'm like a little kid. I'm like, I don't wanna, but I do want to. I actually do wanna, but I also don't wanna. You know, it's one of those kind of I wanna, but I don't wanna. Anyway. From Stephen Stark, for the myth heads, Ashaya is the best, and glad LG is back. Best minds in Westeros. Thank you very much, Lord Stephen Stark.
For 666.
Anthony Gonzalez, there was Mel talking about a warrior with a sword. There sure was. Melisandre talking about a warrior with a sword. There it is. That references a bit to that end scene. We'll be getting into that a bit as well. From Lucifer Means Lightbringer, happy 420. Can't wait to share my endgame theory with you on Saturday. XOXO. That's right. We're going to have LML guesting on Saturday. Yeah.
So no condenser mics on Saturday.
No condenser mic on Saturday either. That's right.
Damn you, LML. You're stymied me in my nice audio efforts. But it's okay.
But it's fun because...
This mic is fine too.
Yeah. The point of our Saturday episodes is predictions and theories. And he has a great theory that I briefly referenced on Monday, but it deserves a full treatment.
Also, it means now I don't need to be in that episode. So. Lovely.
And from Chris Trombley. Love you guys. Thoughts on Harry's armor / character? Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about Harry.
I'm so curious how many show-only viewers, like casual people, just think that's Jaime Lannister, and that the person who arrived at Winterfell is not Jaime Lannister. Like, probably a pretty good number.
Or like they think he's some Lannister. I mean, that looked like, if you didn't know the show very well, that looks the Golden Company looks like the Lannister Company. I mean, they may as well. Actually, we may as well answer this question now. Yeah, he does. I don't know that there's a lot to say on his armor or character. It remains to be seen what the show is going to do with him. I kind of feel like we shouldn't have much expectations there. We already correctly kept our expectations low for the elephants. And, well, they knew we wanted them, and they gave us our fun with Cersei channeling our faux frustration, because I think we mostly knew that we weren't getting elephants. But yeah. I'm curious what they're going to do with Harry Strickland. Do you have any thoughts on Harry Strickland? He's not exactly a super fleshed out book character either, so.
No, not really. I mean, honestly, the most fleshed out thing about him, or the thing that I remember the most about him, besides his feet, is his love of his elephants. So
yeah. His favorite elephant is named Little Pussy. Yeah.
Well,
I don't remember that.
Yeah, right? Isn't that weird? Little Pussy. Why would you call your elephant that?
Weird.
And you can see from the way he looks, too, that the trailer was having some people wondering if he was carrying Blackfire, because this is a very fancy sword, but it looks kind of like a Lannister sword. It's like gold and maybe a little red on there.
Big Lannister vibe. Yeah.
A couple of people thought maybe that would be Bright Roar, like maybe the show would decide to bring that in there somehow. I guess it still could be, but that seems very, very unlikely. I don't think so. Especially given what we just said about Valyrian Steel and how little they're messing with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so probably not a whole lot to say about Harry Strickland, but we'll see. We'll wait. We'll see what happens with him. Let's talk about the new intro. Shay, you have a lot of notes here. Let's
I do have a lot of notes, but you
here.
guys can also take any of this as well, obviously.
Sure.
I wrote. But there's been a few interviews with the team that made this intro, because they originally made it in season 1, and then they got to revamp it now for season 8. And from one of the interviews with BuzzFeed, they talked about how this company, Elastic, really wanted these credits to directly reflect the show's narrative week to week. And they said it becomes very much like a bullet point story outline of the events that have unfolded. And then they said, I'll say that there are differences in every single episode. From episode to episode, pay attention, because there are lots of hints scattered around. So I think everyone will be pretty excited to hear that, like, there's going to be some good changes in every single episode. So that's pretty awesome.
That is really awesome, because the intro has always been just... The moment the show debuted, of course, we got the intro scene, the cold open with the Rangers beyond the wall first, which was very solid. But then we got that intro and the music, and it was like, oh man, this is gonna be good. It just really like it was one of the first things that was like, oh, quality.
Yeah.
And
I had a lot more
fun that they're playing
sympathy for an understanding for the mess up with Dorne, by the way, in the intro before, because like they give them a list of locations, and like the way that the workflow process goes for that team, it's pretty easy for there to be a mistake somewhere there. Like there were other things that they talked about, like if they had been given some like a heads up by HBO, they would have made sure that after Sam leaves Old Town, the credits didn't end at Old Town still. Or that when we went to Casterly Rock and Highgarden, we would have seen it. They were talking about how much they wanted to do that, but they just weren't given that information.
Okay.
So it was interesting, those interviews in particular. But to get into actually how it changed. The astrolabe? What?
Yeah.
The astrolabe, how it actually changed. Yeah. Go ahead.
That's so weird. Sorry. To get into how it actually changed. So it used to show on those metal bands the Doom of Valyria, the Battle of the Trident, and Robert Baratheon being crowned king as the three major events of Westeros. And now it shows, and I'm going to have some images on the screen for you all. First, the wall falling via Viserion, as you can see so there. Cool.
Certainly that would be a large historic event in the future, something that would be memorable. Like that wall stood for 8,000 years, and now it doesn't. Or
and then
has a big hole in it.
The next metal band shows...
Metal band.
The next one shows the Red Wedding.
Red Wedding sounds like a metal band.
Complete though with the flayed man, holding up the wolf head and all of that, and the twins depicted. A little bit less of a major event compared to
the
other two that we're gonna list here, for sure. And then finally, the final metal band. Oh, I can't say.
Can't not hear metal. Everyone's making that joke in the chat too.
The final one has the birth of Daenerys' dragons. As you can see, 1, 2, 3 little dragons, and then a big dragon because she's a dragon herself, and then of course the comet.
Yeah, how many texts and messages LML got when that comet appeared there? Probably more than 6.
Yeah,
6.
Probably. And so, I think it's cool for that astrolabe to change. The choice of the Red Wedding, it was a big moment in the show, but it's definitely a little less largely historically relevant for what it's worth. So then getting into the actual credits, the first thing we see, and this is something that Jinx, right before the episode, maybe within the hour beforehand, she was like, I have a prediction that I haven't seen anyone really predict, but I think that this will be the case. I think the wall will show the gap in it. And
we all kind of seized on that, like, I bet that's a great idea. I hope they do that.
Idea. And then,
enough.
There it was.
Whoop, courtesy of Jinx herself.
And then after that, we go from the wall over to Last Hearth. And there's some really cool, interesting thing here.
That blue there is really neat, huh?
Yes, I think that blue is... I called it the Ice Road.
The Ice Road. Yeah, the Gold Road, the King's Road. Yeah.
It ends there at Last Hearth. So.
Oh, okay.
Will we see it? It will, first of all, a hint, that the others were going to get to Last Hearth in this episode. Now, knowing what we know about this intro being episode specific.
See, one thing I think is really interesting, and I didn't notice this on my own, which is that the hill that Last Hearth is built on, there is in a spiral shape, just like like that thing. They did that on purpose. The Elastic, the team said in an interview that they put this little Easter egg in there.
That's cool.
Yeah, right?
Good job, team.
Yeah. And so then we move on to Winterfell, like we've never seen Winterfell before. We see this above shot, which is very nice. You can really see, the godswood and everything kind of in perspective. But in the same episode, we see another shot, like in real life quotes. But we see Winterfell from above that isn't in the intro sequence, and I'll put it here next so you can compare, which is neat to see.
Yeah, it's kind of flipped.
Yeah, a lot more
one
trees.
One is the southern view, one's the northern view.
Yeah, they're a little bit flipped, but still.
That's really cool.
Yeah, the godswood is massive in both versions of it, and everything is meant to be much more to scale in this version. They used actual little human, virtual human models to make sure that the Red Keep and things like that were to scale, which they weren't before. They were a little more impressionistic.
Nice.
But then we go further into Winterfell and see this weirwood.
Yeah, the weirwood is so cool.
Yeah. We see that. We go in further and we see the Great Hall, which was just a little blurry. I couldn't get a great shot of that, to be honest with you. A perfect shot. But we see the crypts with a little Easter egg here. If you note on screen, you see Lyanna Stark's statue. In the crypts.
Nice.
And so
why that statue?
Yeah, why that statue? But I am curious. They said it'll change episode to episode. So going forward, whether what we see in the crypts will change or exactly what will change there.
Maybe we'll see Ned, or I don't know. There's not a whole lot of other ones that would be terribly relevant. We could see Torrhen Stark. No one would know who that is, though.
So we move on to King's Landing, which again, in terms of scale and the sept being gone, there's some interesting things there. But the thing that really made me so happy is the painted floor.
Yeah, that's so cool. I'm really glad you could get a clear view of that.
Yeah,
it
looks
stands
so
out
nice.
really nicely.
Yeah, I love the painted floor, period. It's one of my, I want a painted floor, so I was happy to see it there. And then we go down into the dungeons and see these dragon skulls, which is pretty neat as well.
Yes.
Obviously.
Love that.
Finally.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Dungeon and Dragon.
Dungeon and Dragons.
Just one of each.
Well, there's 3 dragon skulls.
Oh, yeah, there are more skulls.
3.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And then it finally ends on the shot of the Iron Throne, which now, of course, has the Lannister sigil up top instead. And this is something I wanted to get into in general, I guess. Some people have criticized the marketing for the show for focusing so much on the throne.
Yeah.
And obviously we don't know how it'll pan out ultimately, but I tend to think of it as a misdirect from marketing. That they feel like everyone has been focused on the throne. They want to make it more of a shock to the viewers when it ultimately really doesn't matter and is just destroyed.
Yeah. Okay.
So focus on the throne so that in the final episode or something, when it's destroyed, in the intro sequence, we see a destroyed Iron Throne or something like that. So I'm hoping that this criticism that some people had with this focus on the throne, with the hashtag for the throne, ending with the Iron Throne, when that isn't actually how it's going to pan out.
Right on. Okay. Yeah, that makes some sense. I hadn't thought of it that way. That's cool. They could definitely be tricking us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's my spiel about that intro sequence. Basically, I loved it. I wish the team there wished that they gave them money every season to do it too, because it was lovely.
Yeah, that would have been something, but I bet it's not cheap, huh?
No. Also, the capabilities have just changed in more recent years. The amount of data that they have to use to create, to animate this type of thing has only now become more feasible. The sizes they're using are just massive.
Well, let's ask that question then, based on this. What do you guys think? Is there going to be a throne at the end or no?
I don't think there's gonna be.
Okay. No. What do you think, Lady Gwyn? No?
No, in fact, I was just, when Ashaya was talking, I was thinking of going back to that scene of the snow falling in the throne room.
Yeah.
From season 2?
Yes, 2.
Too. It's a long time ago.
Pretty sure.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I don't think they've forgotten. So, I mean, some things have probably gone by the wayside, but I don't think something like that has. So
it looks like the chat very much agrees. There's a lot of people typing no throne and not a whole lot of yes throne. I don't see anyone saying yes throne. Yeah, so there's some people saying maybe there'll be a ruler, but no throne.
No, yeah.
Breaking the wheel is referred to as something that has to stop. If you break the wheel, that kind of maybe implies no more throne. Yeah. Radio Westeros says yes throne. Yokoi got us.
That's funny.
Had to do it. He had to do it. Okay, so it looks like
got a super chat
from Callista Cross.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
Sorry.
Keep up the good work. Love y'all and your podcast.
Cool. Thank you, Callista. We'll see you at Con of Thrones.
Oh, we will.
Yeah, we will.
Very cool. We got another super chat.
Stephen Stark, Westeros becomes a constitutional republic. Whoa, that seems a bit too advanced, but I would love to see it. Someone come up with the idea of a constitution. Yeah, we need Tyrion to be like, it would be a good idea, a constitution. You're like, a what? Yes. Well, a constitution is this thing where...
Oh yeah, I could see all those sour northern lords being like, yeah, that's a good idea.
And then you have Schoolhouse Rock bill comes up and he's like, let me explain how. I'm still just a bill, and then Cersei tears him right in half. This is your shield, Lord Stark, a piece of paper.
Here's what I'll do with your constitution.
Yeah. So then she'd set it on fire with wildfire. So the episode is called Winterfell, which, hey, why not? It's full of callbacks. It's sort of a reunion episode.
Is the finale going to be called Winter Leave?
Winter stood. It got back up. Winter got back up, dusted itself off, and wrote another 8 seasons. Whoa. Oh, no. So at the end of the episode, if we have time, we're going to go through a lot of those callbacks. We got a nice specific list. I think we may not have time for it. We kind of covered a lot of it
because Aziz has his parallel lives, style that he uses. So I kind of went off, and I'm sure you looked at the end of the document and saw there's so many of them that and maybe argue if you make something vague enough, but I don't know. It's still really fun to rattle them off. So we'll see at the end about that.
Yeah, we'll at least try to cover the ones that Sean and I didn't mention on Monday because we talked about it a good bit, but we didn't nail nearly all of them.
I think I named like a good 15, 20 in my list there. So I definitely
we didn't have nearly that many. Yeah. Okay, so so we're going to talk about the book implications for this episode. There's really quite a bit. I think we're going to focus on Jon's parentage, but also the dragon riding stuff and a few other things, some of the stuff down at King's Landing. We'll start by talking about the reunions because there were so many of them and it was such a big part of the episode. Lady Gwyn, you had a note here that I think is interesting, and in general we want to talk about how some of these reunions might play out in the books because they're gonna happen. Yeah. Maybe not all of them, but some of them will.
Well, we went and looked, and probably a lot of people did this. Jon and Arya haven't seen each other since season 1, episode 2, The King's Road, which aired April 24th, 2011. So nearly 8 years, and that was the occasion when he gave her needle. That we'll talk about that later when we're talking about the callbacks. In that episode, Bran was comatose, so Jon technically saw him. He kissed him goodbye. That was that scene. But technically, Bran hasn't seen Jon, so they haven't spoken to each other since the very first episode, which aired 8 years ago today. April 17th, 2011, Winter's Coming aired. So the vibe from this was definitely full circle, which is something I'm sure we're going to get in the books.
I wonder, it would have been really funny if Jon said, I haven't seen you since, blankety blank, and Bran's like, well, I've seen you. That would definitely fit in with Bran is everywhere. Bran is creepy in this vibe.
Just
Like, no, I saw you though. Just
What?
like he said to Sansa, you look so beautiful at your wedding. She's like, what the?
The question I have is, I wonder how many, like, if we could think about the things that happened in season 1, episode 10.
Right.
Do we think those things, what things we'll see some parallels to in the actual finale? Because the finale of season 1 might be the one we get
That's
a
an
lot
interesting idea.
of parallels.
Yeah.
The dragons will revert to eggs.
Well, like, it is true, like, the idea that we'll see dragon eggs.
Yeah.
And, like, that there will still be, like, a clutch of dragon eggs not hatched, but with the potential.
Or
Yeah,
a walker,
definitely.
another White Walker being seen after we think they're all gone. or-
Yeah.
that
maybe
would be more like the beginning of the season.
Yeah, it might be more like that, but worth going back to see season 1, episode 10, perhaps, with that in mind. Once we get closer to like predicting, or it would be for our predictions episode.
Well, if we finally see Ned's body as a white, then
yeah, be perfect.
I would say that's a perfect recap, but it's more of a decap. Oh man,
That was pretty good.
That was
that
a good
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
slow clap. From Merit of Abydos, super chat. Isle of Faces seems now to be connected to the bank. Any guesses? To the bank, the Iron Bank is
The
that?
Iron Bank. I don't think we saw that in this episode, did we? I don't
Yeah, I'm
think they
not
had
really
any
sure
reference
what.
to
That's an
that.
interesting idea. I'm not really sure. I guess I'm not really sure what that means, though. I do think that the Iron Bank might become more important, especially if we see if one of these potentially rumored returns turns out to be Faceless Man, like Jaqen could come back or something like, or you know, that actor. It wouldn't necessarily be the same person, you know how they work, but yeah. But yeah, if Merit of Abydos, if you have another clarification on that question, we will certainly return to it. But I don't know about connecting it to the bank at this point. Let's talk about another one. Is the Night King smart enough to skip Winterfell? That's an idea that Sean had. I think it's possible. I think it's more likely in the books. I think in the books, it's not going to be. It may not be just a last stand at Winterfell because there may be other places, other castles being attacked. We may hear about that. I think it'll be a little bit more, maybe not thorough isn't the right word, but expansive. What do you think, Lady Gwyn?
Yeah. I don't know, really.
Because they don't have a
I
leader
don't-
figure as far as we know. So like one walker leading them all to one place, maybe. That's kind of part of why I don't, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I basically agree with that.
It's hard to say for sure, though. I mean, they could have, like, because there's some idea maybe that the wall could be broken in multiple places, you know, and if that happens and they could seep through in multiple places, they could come. I don't know.
They could be coming from different directions, or
It seems like that would be effective if they were to, you know, like how Gregor, or how Tywin sent Gregor and Emery Lorch into the Riverlands. Just attack wherever you can and keep them reeling. They'll never, you know, they can't defend anything if they never know where you're going to attack. It's the same strategy the Ironborn use. Maybe that's a little too advanced for the others, but we certainly
maybe
see
as a
them.
strategy, but maybe as a way it plays out. I mean, it could play out like that. I mean, Winterfell. I don't think they're going to skip Winterfell because I think it's important.
Yeah.
Winterfell's a magical place on a par with Storm's End and the Wall, and you know, so I think it's probably something that they will have the idea that they have to, you know, attack or whatever, the same way they did the Wall.
Yeah. Well, I think the question, well, maybe that's not what the question meant, but I was assuming what the questioner was asking if the Night King would not skip Winterfell, meaning to not attack it, but
He doesn't go.
he doesn't go.
Oh,
As in, he has an attack. He still has an attack there while he sends part of his army elsewhere.
He sends his, right, gotcha. So sends his lieutenant, the one that
handed him the lance.
One,
the
the one
ice
with the
lance,
lustrous
the
hair.
other one.
one of the ones.
How do we identify it?
Yeah, like that's actually very racist. They look incredibly different when you look closely. You can see in the rivets on their faces that some of them are a little more wizened.
All white people look the same.
Specious. I don't know.
These are really white people.
We're very
super
suspicious
white
against the others. I'm sorry.
All white. You said all White Walker people look the same.
Several of them have already been killed, and the ones that came in to replace them, I don't know.
Next question is from Laura Brandos. Love book to show. What are your thoughts on Melisandre's role in the last season? Yeah, definitely going to be something. I
Keep
think
expecting her to come back with some people.
Yeah,
some people with like some flaming swords, like who can teach people. Like I don't know. It seems like people
An
who
army
are
of
fire
barracks.
priests, like they would be pretty gung ho.
Mm.
And like we've seen some actually pretty badass priests and priests who can again teach like people how to do barrack type things.
she's gone over
I
there
don't
to
know.
be like, they killed Thoros. And
Yeah.
everyone's going to be pissed, and the whole continent of Essos will rise up and be like, they killed Thoros.
Mhm.
That's what's really going to... He's the real prince that was promised. But I do think she's going to do something important, yeah. I mean, she didn't just leave to say, I'll come back later, and to just come back later without doing something.
Without something.
Yeah,
important.
something or someone or many someones.
Yeah.
I definitely lean towards many someones. I can't think of an
Yeah.
artifact
I just
in
want her to
particular
like
she would
come
bring.
in clutch with like streaming dresses and like robes. Like just
She brings
men
back
and women.
like chests and chests full of amazing dresses. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, you guys are going to look good for this final battle. Any other?
Well, yeah, no, I think it's more to my. What I'm thinking is when does she come back? Is she gonna, is she gonna ride in next week?
Hmm.
Next episode.
Yeah.
She show up at Winterfell with this whatever she went to get.
Good question. Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, I think in the books it seems very likely there will be a large amount of Relorists, for lack of a better word, coming over somehow with
forget.
Daenerys or
Has George made any concrete comments on how much of a POV Melisandre will get? Like how many more? Like he said we will get more POV of her.
we did. I don't think
believe
we know
that we
how
don't
many
know,
chapters,
but we will get more.
Yeah.
And so like the idea that we will get more, like if
We will,
she
yeah.
were to experience those sort of things, and we see that from her perspective.
Isn't she the only living
She is.
POV at the wall right now?
She is. That's what I was gonna say. Until John.
Yeah.
So there's at
Wait,
least
and
that.
And so then maybe
What have you.
then he's back, and then okay, Melisandre, you go do this thing that is somewhat comparable to what she may do in the show.
Yeah, you kind of don't expect Mel and John to continue to hang out the whole time, But also, I don't think it necessarily has to be Melisandre that goes to Essos to do this stuff.
No, it's just she's like we're not. It's just in the books we only have so many point of views
Yeah.
of which could see this sort of thing, and so I'm
Yeah,
thinking
you're
about
right.
ones that he's not going to add new ones.
I feel like they're going to come with Dany when they come. I think that's not an unlikely thing, like because they could. That's their. They have the ships, the Ironborn ships, maybe, or they have. She's already bringing all these Dothraki, and she's already supposed to be the stallion that mounts the world, which part of that prophecy is uniting these different people. So
Right, and she's got who's the priest that's with Victorian
Makaro,
Makaro. So they're gonna collect up people, and she's gonna have quite the cavalcade circus of.
with Benero, the top red priest saying
And-
Daenerys
yeah.
is Azor Ahai. That's gonna move a few people's feet, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Can you say massive slave revolt?
Massive slave revolt.
You can. Great. Excellent. Next question from Chris Trombley. Can you guys see Rhaegal and Drogon holding back on attacking an undead Viserion? Maybe meaning they're like,
They
oh, that's our
would,
brother.
yeah.
Motherhood?
I will say, so I just want to say, like, when they weren't eating, and Dany was like, they don't like the cold. Like, I get, like, she has a bond with them, so I guess she just knows. But also, they lost their brother. Like,
That's what I thought.
Like,
Yeah.
they'd be depressed. Like, that's a
Like-
sad thing.
Yeah.
That was my first interpretation, but she was so confident about why they weren't eating. And so, like, I feel like more likely it's a little of both. They don't like the cold, and they're also sad about losing,
That could be.
Viserion. But so, yeah, I think 100%. Like, I don't know if I think the show will do it, but I would like to see that. Like, I think they should have a very real bond with each other. But also, I think maybe they can just sense, like, this is ice bad, like, enemy dragon.
Yeah, I mean, we see them turn on each other pretty quick in like the history literature.
Yeah.
Like the dances, they kind of reflect their
What
riders'
about that
attitude.
scene
it
where they
seems
kind of like snap at each other? Right?
Yeah,
Isn't there
the
that
blacks and
that?
the greens. It was
No, I was talking about like Drogon, Viserion, and Rhaegal. Isn't
Oh.
there a little scene where they
I don't think they snap at each
Okay.
other. I think
Okay.
they were snapping at like the people who were trying to feed them. They were so unhappy with their new captivity.
Okay, yeah, it was that scene. I was trying
Yeah.
to picture if we ever saw them specifically,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think
nip
they
at one
fought
another.
each other.
Yeah. They might have that connection the same way like wargs do, like the wolves
Yeah.
sense each other.
That's true. Yeah.
So, they could certainly sense Viserion and that there's something gone horribly wrong.
Yeah.
You know,
Like,
you
not
don't know what their
him.
bond is like.
Relating to them being cold, though, we certainly get a clue for that in Fire and Blood with Alysanne going up north with Silverwing, and that's sort of clarified in that sense as well. So it's supported at least as a.
Some people in the chat said the three dragons snapped at each other in season 3.
Did they?
I don't know.
Okay.
We'll save more.
So that's a
people
show
to
thing.
that. I don't
Interesting.
know. Again, the show. Yeah, I thought I specifically remembered them like a little bit of like just growing pains.
Might be a little more research and required then. We'll have to check that out. Next question. Alexander Wilson. George R. R. Martin said the show and the books will have the same ending. What are your thoughts? Yeah, I mean, as far as the basics of the ending, and it's hard to take him too literally there because a lot of the same things have happened in the show that are going to happen in the books. It's just a very, very different way of getting there and the very different way that it's going to be written. George's writing is going to be a whole lot different than this show's writing. So it's the journey, not the destination for me. So I think even if it is pretty similar, it's not going to bother me.
Yeah. I mean, I picture large, big stroke, broad stroke things like Iron Throne is destroyed, dragons are dead, maybe there is the potential for dragon birth one day in the future.
Certain main characters have the same
are
fate
alive
from book to
or
show.
similar fate, but like very broad and things that it's very difficult for anyone to predict, especially when you compare the books to the show. There's so many plot threads. Like you can, but the broad strokes, I still feel Iron Throne dead.
Yeah,
just gone, destroyed.
Yeah.
What do you think, Lady Gwyn?
Yeah, same. It's come back to something we've talked about a lot in the past. George gave them bullet points, right? Because he hadn't written the story yet, so he's like just beyond just the source material. They have bullet points, so they're going to hit those bullet points, like you said, journey to get there. I mean, it's like he said, I'm in Boston. We have to get to Los Angeles. I'm going to go this way, but somebody else is going to go a different way.
Yeah.
It's going to be a different journey, and I look forward to the journey.
And you might get there, and you both get to Boston, but you get to one area of Boston, and they get to another one, and you don't actually get to like the same exact spot,
Yes, good point.
Yeah.
Even though you hit that bullet point, it might feel different.
Yeah.
In different cases, depends how you took, what road you took to get there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And of course, we don't preach Valar Rereadus because we expect the plot to be different the second time. You read the book, boy, this is a different ending,
Right.
So it's because the journey is worth repeating. And sure, it's nice to be surprised and have fun that way, but there's so much more to it than that. Okay. Next question from Tempest Brewer. Who do you think the first major death of the season will be? No offense to Little Lord Umber. Yeah. And that, of course, we'll talk about that a little later, but yeah, that's this whole Little Lord Umber thing has got to go differently in the books because there's different Umbers around.
Our predictions for deaths like this are a little tricky given the predictions and not wanting to use the next time on in the trailers, which we're not trying to reference. But I'm just going to throw out Grey Worm.
Yeah, Grey Worm's real danger.
He's just got a love interest. He's putting himself in the way of fighting. There's going to be fighting. It seems at Winterfell. It would be sad for Missandei. That's my pick. Is Grey Worm for now, for the first major death. I don't know.
What do you think, Lady Gwyn?
I know. Someone says, why the black guy always got to die first? And now I'm extra sure that it's him. I'm just thinking about the battle. Like, we just saw these scenes with him.
Yeah, we don't want the black guy to die first.
I actually don't want him. I want him and Missandei to have, a lot of extended scenes. So hopefully he doesn't die. Because I don't think any major characters are going to die in the next episode.
Yeah, I think we'll probably... I kind of agree. I think it'll be at the battle. It could easily be someone like Jorah or
Tormund or Ed on there if they don't
Podrick
make it back, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not envisioning deaths in episode 2.
It's just that Grey Worm is already near the top of the list because he's a frontline fighter. I mean, that's just as hardcore as it gets. That's extreme danger.
Yeah.
It's because he's such a badass. It's it's because he's he's the dude that said I'm never afraid of anything until I met Missandei. It's like is he really not going to be afraid of the army of the dead? He might not be, but that would also be why he might be in a lot of danger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next question is from, not really a question, but a statement. Call Me Blondie says, I think Cersei is in menopause.
That's what Jamie's name should be. Call me Blondie.
That's why is it menopause? It's such a strange word. It's not a pause. It's got nothing to do with
young,
men.
I think for menopause.
What's that?
I think Cersei's in general, like at the age she is in the show, she's a little young for what age people normally go into menopause.
Probably.
Yeah.
Like a little bit.
It wouldn't be that strange, but it is a little. It would be a little too late.
I think it's on the early.
It's a tough call because Lena probably isn't. Although I don't know, maybe. But I think that's just a hilarious idea because it fits with my. I just feel Cersei in the book. Cersei is just so utterly clueless. I love to make fun of her, so I would think that was hilarious if she was just unknowingly like beyond childbearing years, but thought she was pregnant. Just fits.
Which is a good point to bring up. There's the Cersei baby conundrum stuff could happen in some form or another in the books, but it won't be a conundrum. Like, we won't be wondering if she's pregnant because we'll have her POV, and there won't be any, maybe she's too old to have a baby talk, because she's definitely not too old in the books.
Yeah.
She's in her 30s. She's not even close to too old, So that's just not on the table. So it's definitely a very different look, that whole plot line in the books, for many reasons, not just because Cersei has probably got a bigger role in the show than she has in the books. But it'll be more like the opposite. Like, she won't know she's pregnant. It'll be more like in her head, she's like, wonder what's going my dress. Well, we see that already. My dresses are too tight. Yeah, it's so funny. We actually have some notes on that later in the episode. So we'll come back to the Cersei stuff. Okay. We have some more thoughts on that whole topic. From Stephen Stark, let's take a moment to remember the friggin' Italian who started this whole damn thing. And thanks to Beck, social scientist, for bringing this up. Yes, thanks, Bex. And thank you, friggin' Italian and Stephen Stark. Yeah, Stephen Mangiamelli started this show in 2011/2012. And it was originally designed just to be a call-in show. He started the show as kind of as an offshoot of his experiences covering Lost, the show. And yeah, he did have some health complications. He had stomach cancer, and he passed in 2014. The last episode he was a part of, I can't remember which last episode he was a part of. He
rejoined us for our Game of Thrones coverage episode.
It was season 6, I think.
It was a recap? Yeah. Some roundtable, because
it was the end of the season, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he had to quit halfway through the episode, and that was the last time we ever got to speak to him.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, thank you, Steve, from the great beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's all that gets us through the questions for now. There'll probably be more, but let's get into Winterfell.
Quick, before more people throw money at us. Get on.
So Unsullied and Dragons at Winterfell, is that something we will see in the books?
I think that. I guess I don't know about at Winterfell, but I still think we will see this culture clash will be a thing, like a more major thing. But I guess when I think about at Winterfell in particular, I don't know about getting that far north, because I still think that they might consolidate like more in the Riverlands or something like that.
Okay, yeah. So you think they'll be like, these armies will mingle at some point, but it maybe won't be in the north.
Yeah, maybe not.
Okay, yeah, that's reasonable.
Retreat first.
I can see that.
Look, I mean, if we want to talk about parallels, parallel lives, what's the biggest castle? The one, if you read Fire and Blood, where do they, kind of assemble when they need a place to host a huge group of people? And is quite central. So, it could very well come down to Harrenhal again.
And it's so close to
over and over again.
So close to the God's Eye, too. And
yeah.
And boy, what a horrible place for them to have to hole up. I mean, it is the thing about it. It's so huge. It does have room for everyone, basically. But what a horrible place to be trapped for a siege. You're like, God, this place sucks. It's so creepy. And
would just be, like, talk about a haunted
castle. I like the idea, though. As awful as it is to try to put myself in their place, it sounds like a fantastic way to run the story. With winter, like, freezing the trident over and the God's Eye. Yeah. Ooh, I like it. That's cool. That's one of the things I like about the season 8 is Sure, a lot of it might be pretty far off in terms of how we get from point A to point B, but some of the things it's inspiring us to talk about today is just really, really fun, and things I hadn't really considered.
Mm-hmm. Will you scroll back up, Aziz?
Sure.
Scroll past my stuff. I'm using your... But yeah, so we see these unsullied dragons at Winterfell here, and I think this culture clash, no matter where it happens in Westeros, in the books, it will be interesting. Like they bring up how the North isn't particularly amenable to outsiders, but. And that is true. I think they're extra against it versus the Reach, say, potentially, But these are black and brown outsiders to boot. So, we see a little bit of that, a little bit of it, with Grey Worm and Missandei, But I would love to see more of either Grey Worm and Missandei, specifically interacting with the xenophobia, or even just a small scene with the Dothraki, yearning for the warm weather again and struggling with the cold.
Yeah, we hope we get that in the books, maybe. I mean, it'd be kind of hard to get it directly because George has said no more POVs, and that would imply a Dothraki or Unsullied POV would seemingly be off the table given that. But maybe he'll change his mind, or he'll just have some of the POVs go out and have these conversations, And George is very aware of it now because people, he's heard this criticism, and he doesn't listen to a lot of theories, but this is one that I'm pretty sure he's heard, and given his gardener style, it's certainly not too late for him to do something if he hadn't already planned. He may have already had this plan, so we can't assume. So the next question is, will it be yielded to Queen Daenerys in the show or in the books? That's an interesting question. Will that happen?
I mean, it depends on if you stack on what we said before, whether or not we think they will make it up to Winterfell.
Yeah,
that depends on whether it would be. I guess. I mean, Winterfell, it's not like Jon can bend the knee to Daenerys without her coming up to Winterfell and having Winterfell is yours.
Yeah, definitely.
Yours,
Yeah, wouldn't it have to be like Winterfell is yours or grace? We don't have to have that scene necessarily, but but Winterfell comes under her regime or whatever.
Yeah, and wouldn't it be even a better kind of parallel to the past? Because we'll talk about the Torrhen Stark element, but if Jon is coming south and actually bends the knee to Dany in the Riverlands, it'd be a much greater parallel to Torrhen Stark and Aegon the Conqueror.
That's true. Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
We've got some talk of logistics, which is nice. We knew we couldn't get a lot. They just don't have time for it, but I like that they got some in there.
Yeah. We see, Sansa as bookkeeper, and Eliana, who we've had on here at Arithmetric, and who does, Girls Gone Canon and all that. You guys know Eliana. You know her. She pulled a quote from that lovely Rolling Stone interview with George R. R. Martin, and I'll read it here because it merits repeating, I think, always. Where he says, but Tolkien doesn't ask the question, what was Aragorn's tax policy? Did he maintain a standing army? What did he do in times of flood and famine? And what about all these orcs? By the end of the war, Sauron is gone, but all of the orcs aren't gone. They're in the mountains. Did Aragorn pursue a policy of systematic genocide and kill them? Even the little baby orcs in their little orc cradles? Anyways, questions that Georgia asks and thinks about, and they're important. And he's referenced this theme in the novels multiple times, and I mean, it makes sense that the show just can't focus on that enough, but I'm glad they bring it up because the questions of supply, they do need to be dealt with, but conversely, even if Sansa's raising these concerns, they do also need the forces to defeat the army of the dead. They just need to work together. That's why you need all kinds of people.
We're getting some of the worst elements not present. Like we're probably not going to see starvation and people literally freeze to death and the disease that comes with that.
I don't think.
But that is something we will almost certainly see in the books.
I think if they showed us that in the show, we'd be like, how did it get to this so quickly? They have to show us time jumps.
Right? And you're right. Yeah, winter is a slow onset kind of thing. You don't starve to death quickly. I mean,
no. But speaking of starving, Sansa says this thing, and then just, a couple of scenes later, Dany validates her concern with that scene with the dragons. The dragons are barely eating, she says. They come back and they've eaten 18 goats and 11 sheep.
Yeah.
I presume that's within a day or so. That's been their intake. And doesn't that just prove how valid Sansa's concerns are? Because I could feed a ton of people.
I agree with that. I do wonder what Dany's stores are, what they brought with them. They obviously they were traveling with food and supplies that they have. That she's not coming to Sansa's door
empty-handed.
Feed my dragons, please, in these armies. But the food they have could be used again to make them last longer, or to bring more people to be protected, is what Sansa's saying essentially. Mm-hmm. And also, maybe Dany's stores aren't enough to actually last herself long enough.
Right.
One thing will probably it's ironic that this may or may not be a problem in the books, because the dragons have been seen eating corpses. They eat diseased corpses at Marine, and I don't see why they couldn't. And the direwolves eat whites, so I feel like dragons can eat whites. So once they have a clash, they've got plenty of food.
They could eat corpses to prevent them being whites, which would be a very handy thing.
I think that's a genius idea. I really would love it if someone brought that up. It's like the kind of workaround, sneaky thing that I really don't think it will happen in either the books or the show.
It's meat.
It would be great, though, because, Jon's always like, oh, all these people are going to become, an army of the undead if we don't defend them. And what if the light bulb goes off in his head and he's like, well, unless we.
It's so good. I really at least try. I mean, what's the worst that happens? I guess the worst that happens is somehow it infects the dragons, but the probably more makes them a little sick, maybe. Is a little toxic or rancid.
They have all that fire in their blood.
They have some bad breath or something.
Dragons don't get sick.
They don't get sick. So
apparently. So
Will we see a grayscale dragon? I wonder if that kind of sickness could get them.
Probably not. Cool. But if they swallowed from the inside, that's where I wonder. Is that maybe dragons don't get sick, but when they eat something like that,
that's sort of the basis of the one of the bases of the Tyrion. Tongue, grayscale getting him from the inside out theory or whatever that one. I forget what that theory was called. That's not the Silent Lion one. That's a different one.
What?
It's for him losing his tongue. But I think it's might amount to sort of the same.
He could lose his.
Both those theories kind of lead to a similar place. Yeah. Which is Tyrion having no tongue, which is but you could kind of see it because Jaime lost his hand, and Tyrion already lost a nose. He doesn't need to lose his tongue also. It definitely won't happen in the show. There's no way they're making Tyrion voiceless on the show. That is out of the question, I believe.
So someone in the comments, you nailed it. The dragons died from food poisoning, not battle.
Okay, so let's talk about some of these specific reunions now that we have the large scale armies. Now that everyone's at Winterfell, we can move to some of the individual meetings here. Jon and Bran, I guess that's one of the first ones.
Yeah, this is Jon's first experience of this detached, not almost Bran type thing. And he says, are you a man? Almost. And Jon's immediate impression is probably he's being humble or modest, that he's not quite an adult, but obviously we know he means, I'm more than a man, as it so happens. But, Jon gives Sansa this little, glance, is this normal for him to look like this?
That's, only Bran could make Jon seem like the emotional one, right?
Yes.
That's funny.
He's so incredibly detached that...
Yes.
I mean, it's a bit sad, really, because Jon is so excited, kind of, cantering into the yard. You can just see how excited he is once he spies Bran there, and then he gets this, very wooden... response.
His Jon's face really changes. I love, there was a good meme going around where it's that moment where Jon realizes Bran is a weirdo, and it's his smile, then all of a sudden he just What?
He's like,
What is going on here? Which kind of brings us to an interesting question. Do like, how are other characters going to see Bran when they interact with him? Like in the books, he's pretty not only he's not even the three-eyed raven yet, let alone being
I guess that
about to
raises
meet
the bigger
his family
question that
again.
we've addressed in the past, but merits more discussion.
Yeah, now that we're actually seeing it on
Are you
screen, yeah.
pretty well confident that you think he's leaving the cave now, or you still think
Yeah.
it could be different?
I still think he's leaving the cave. Yeah,
You think he's leaving the cave?
yeah, I think it's pretty likely. Especially given everything what we learned about Dark Sister and with seeing the show do these things. I don't think they would go this far on their own direction.
yeah.
And it gets us to the hold the door thing somehow. Maybe not at the cave, a door, but maybe like the Black Gate or some sort of barrier at the wall. It's hard for hold the door to happen at the cave with them staying there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I do wonder how this will not just how people will react to Bran, but how it's going to be laid out logistically in the books. Like Bran POVs, are we still going to get them? We might just not get. We may only get a couple more. They may be like Melisandre, where we just get like one or two in a book because he knows too much, or
Right. Yeah.
because like what George had to do with say Ned's point of view is just not have Ned not think about certain things to make it work. And I don't know if he loves doing that. So Bran, to compartmentalize Bran, we have to just not be in his head as much. But that is up to the master. We'll see what he does. Any other thoughts on Jon Bran? Jon?
Bran.
All right, let's talk about Jon Sansa then. This is one that I'm a little less sure will happen in the books, but still seems, we talked about some of this last season. It seems like some Jon and Sansa debating could happen, something like this. What do you guys think about this scene in general?
Obviously they have a little bit of a conflict here. It's setting up what seems like maybe more of a conflict, which we'll get into later. But still, in that scene, that council scene, Jon looks to Sansa. Like, he turns to her to see her reaction. He doesn't even look at Daenerys once during that whole scene. He's just, he's pretty well focused, whether it's that he knows that she's not going to be happy about it, or whether he actually wants to gauge her reaction, or whatever. But I did appreciate that depiction of him looking to her opinion, I suppose.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah,
Lady Grey, what about you?
I think he's still very, he's very much all about his family, and them kind of sticking together. From the political perspective, the framing of that scene, I thought, was very interesting because Jon is literally stuck between these two powerful women. Like there's this one kind of shot of his face, and he's got the two on either side of them. That's his kind of personal feelings. He really wants them to get along, and he's a bit disturbed that they're not getting along. But I think from his politics, it's very much focused on what he and Sansa both know. And I think maybe Dany isn't quite there, even though she knows, the reality. But
yeah, and they knew not to argue, in her out loud there about it all. So they presented a unified, front, essentially. Which is good to see, even when there's some infighting a little bit. They learned a lesson.
Yeah. I like the part when, at the beginning, when sort of Dany and Sansa are kind of squaring off, right when they first arrive, and Bran says, "We don't have time for this."
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I just thought, he was like, "Wow, ladies, we just don't have time for this." But I really feel like that was aimed at Dany, because Sansa gives this kind of knowing look. She's like, "Yeah, no kidding. We got more important to do." So we got to get her to stop caring about being the queen and really kind of like Jon, focus on what's important.
Yeah.
So let's move on to Sansa and Tyrion.
Yeah. Will, like, I mean, I one question is, will they be reunited in the books? It seems likely enough. It seems like a safe enough guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, one of my favorite lines in the whole episode was just Sansa saying Joffrey's wedding had its moments.
One moment in particular.
I'm just frothing at the mouth, to be honest with you, for just more scenes of these two, because part of it's that I miss Tyrion's, wit, and I miss these kind of like, sly replies to each other that aren't mean or anything like that, but they can be cutting. And stuff
her
like
wit
that.
is replacing Olenna's wit, the kind of wit we got from Olenna.
And so like I want to hear this. I want to see this snarking, and so like I just really want to see them talk to each other more about some of their escapades. They both keeping their cards like very close to their chest, and can kind of already just get a read on each other.
Yeah.
They know what happened and that it wasn't each other. There's not much else to talk about. Like Sansa doesn't seem to care about what Tyrion got up to in the months and how he ended up with Dany, and he doesn't seem to care about how she ended up where she is, which is too bad. I would like to see them just chatting away over a glass of wine.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think there was anything like like a lot of these reunions, it would be nice if they were a little longer, a little played out more, but I don't have a problem with them not like really sitting down to discuss what happened with Joffrey. Like they both like thinking about Joffrey is not pleasant for either of them. It's not just like, to us it's trivia. To them, if they were real people, it would be it's just like discussing something that was traumatic. And you don't just lightly bring that up. It's like, I haven't seen you in years, let's talk about that trauma.
Yeah, I mean, Tyrion recognizes the like trauma she had, because when he brings up Cersei, he like softens towards her, notably because he is aware of how much of a position of power Cersei was over Sansa, and like how she would regress her back to feeling like a scared little girl and all that. And I mean, Sansa doesn't really give him a lot to go on there. Like he softens towards her, and she just kind of stiffens more, it seems, and it's just like, you're an idiot, basically says, we should be scared of her. I'm not wrong. I'm not just a scared little girl for thinking this. Like you're just underestimating her.
Yeah, she's being. It's almost like she's saying being soft about Cersei is the exact opposite of what you should be doing. Like you should be. You should take her extremely seriously. And of course, no one takes Cersei more seriously than Sansa probably at this point.
Oh yeah,
I think it's almost she's almost taking Cersei too seriously, but it's good that someone isn't forgetting about how dangerous she is, because someone needs to be on top of that, and it's not Tyrion. So it better be somebody. Sansa's kind of picking up a lot of the slack. She's worrying about a lot of the things that no one else seems to be worrying about, and that's real leadership. And I like that. I like that this way it was framed with Sansa. It was never about her being a woman. It's never like objection to her ruling. No, really, no one's ever really objected to her ruling at any point. They're like, she's a lady of Winterfell and she's clearly capable. Boom, that's it. And I kind of like that about the Dany stuff too. Even if they're objecting to her because she's never been to the North. She doesn't know what the North is like. She has no idea. It's like what Umbers said. It's like, what do they know about the Wolfswood and the that stuff? Like, it's not about. They're not making it a gendered complaint, which I like that. It's just about that they prefer Jon because they know him and he's from the North, which is that's good. That's good because this fandom gets get a little. You don't want to give anyone rope with that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm glad that they took some care with that. Any other thoughts on Tyrion Sansa or Sansa Cersei stuff?
Sansa,
I have
Jon.
Sansa Cersei, but it's way down there.
Okay, we'll come back to that.
Get there.
A couple more super chats. Chris Trombley says, do you get the hint that Sansa still doesn't believe the walkers are real with all her pessimist concerns about the Seven Kingdoms and Cersei? No, I wouldn't go that far. I think she knows Cersei. She understands that threat. If you think back to maybe a season or two ago, I forget who said it. It was probably Jon, but it was like, you can't conceive of this problem. It's our minds weren't built to conceive this kind of a problem until you are confronted with it. And it's been a consistent thing. It's like, until you see the army of the dead, everyone downplays it until they see it.
I mean, I guess someone really convinced me. I still, it's hard for me to imagine being convinced, to be honest. Like, I'm just trying to put myself in her shoes. I mean, I know that she has seen dragons and other magical things, but again, picture you, Aziz, you come to me one day and you say, I've seen the army of the dead. And I'm like, well, I probably...
What show was that?
I probably would have you committed or would have you looked at or something.
Yeah.
But let's say we're like, you show me footage, and I somehow...
If you're not taking this threat seriously, you're the one who needs to be committed.
I would really have questions. And even when I say, like, I'm convinced and you have convinced me, you don't feel that fear. It's really hard to imagine.
It's
feeling
visceral,
that way.
yeah. Seeing it,
Yeah.
like the dude raises his hands and people come back to life, but they're not alive. It's like, yeah, how do you describe that? So I get that it's hard for her to fathom it. And Jon says that. He's like, you haven't seen them, you don't know, and that's he really hones in on the fact that it's once you see it, and that's what it was for Dany. If you guys recall, Dany was like, I'm not going to help unless you kneel. And Jon's like, oh, I'm not going to kneel unless you help. Dany helped before the kneeling. She was like, okay, I see them now. I get it. And
So,
she's like, I'm going to come help you. And Jon's like, okay, well, also I'm going to kneel. So I think that got lost in the shuffle.
Oh, yeah, he will.
But so it really does seem to be like seeing is believing is really the case here.
All right. Mm-hmm.
Dornish Dan is channeling Sansa's thoughts here very well. He says, Sansa, dear gods, why are all these people trusting Cersei? And they're eating all of my food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good, pretty much. That is pretty accurate.
I mean, if you know Cersei, to have her at your back, when you have this army of the dead in front of you and Cersei's behind you, I mean, that's it's pretty alarming for Sansa. I don't blame her at all for being concerned and kind of...
Yeah, she's not wrong that Cersei is a huge threat. Just because she is maybe misprioritizing the problems, it's not a big mistake. It's and I imagine she'll get that sorted out once she gets a peek at what they're faced with. Denal Peoples ask, is it me or does it seem that Sansa might be going down a Littlefinger/Cersei-like arc? I wouldn't go that far. Like, she definitely learned from Cersei, but at Littlefinger, no, she's not going to do that kind of stuff. She's more of a, Well, actually, this next question from Anthony Gonzalez. Sansa giving Jon advice like Kat did for Robb. That is more what it's like.
Running a household.
Yes,
and,
it's tough. You have to make hard choices.
Sansa's learned all of her lessons from Cersei and Littlefinger, but she's learned what she needs to learn. She's not going to be like them.
She saw how much of their things didn't work.
Them. Yeah, she's learned what does work, what doesn't work, and
Yeah. I mean, she sits down and looks at Littlefinger's career. She's like, well, look where he ended up. I'm not going to do what he did. But she might take a cup. She might say, well, some of those things he did worked.
Yeah, she's learned how to be kind of a manipulator in a way, but in a way that works. Yeah.
I mean, manipulation generally has a negative connotation, but there is such thing as manipulating people positively. Like when you people, we all like this whole country tells kids that Santa Claus is real. That's manipulation, but it's not evil. It's not bad. It's not wrong. I don't think, but it's technically you're lying. Yes. Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk about Jon and Arya.
Yeah.
Here's yet another reunion.
Heartfelt reunion, yada yada, lovely moment. We'll get into that. But Arya didn't show Jon her own Valyrian steel dagger.
Yeah, that's kind of weird, right?
Yeah, she specifically showed him Needle, and he showed her his Valyrian steel, and you think he would see what's this other little thing on your waist? He didn't say anything. She didn't say anything. So,
Dragonbone hilt. Yeah,
you would think he would ask. Either way. So that's one thing that I got to think about more in the significance, and we'll see if Arya does show him in the future, or if it just shows that she still has her reservations. She doesn't. She's not just gonna pretend that this is everything goes back to how it was. She's learned her own lessons. Yeah. Don't just trust everyone. But also Arya wonders how Jon survived, a knife to the heart, and he says he didn't. So Arya is one of the people who's actually seen people brought back to life. Beric Dondarrion. Good
catch. I didn't think of that. Wow.
Along with some other people who've seen him brought back to life, like the Hound. But Arya specifically, she should believe it and does immediately.
That's a great point. Yeah. Nice.
And whatever the implications there are, for the books, I do wonder if when Arya and Jon are reunited, if it won't go as happily as we envision, and two, whether she'll believe him when other people don't, or be intrigued by it. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts before we move on.
Lady Gwyn, what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think that is a very good point. She didn't seem fazed by it at all.
If I'm thinking about the books, Arya really has quite a bit of thinking about he doesn't drink wine. He drinks wine, or she thinks about how he doesn't sleep, and she just pays attention to him.
Yeah,
so that
she notices Jon does similar things, or can tell the difference.
Yeah, you can really see that coming in the books. That's a great catch. The way she really pays attention to Beric, and we all have known for a long time that Beric is an analog to Bloodraven and to Jon as well. So. That
and
really
of course,
fits.
I also wonder with Lady Stoneheart about whether Lady Stoneheart will see either of her daughters, and whether Arya will see more people brought back to life.
Yeah, that's one that that's a perfect example of something that's definitely going to play out in the books in some way or another that we don't get a clue on here in the show is Lady Stoneheart's interactions with
this
anyone.
idea from Treehugger. Would she be okay with him cheating death? It's the one true God is death, the God of many faces, and he's cheated it. Yeah, that is a funny idea.
I saw an earlier comment from Joe Magician where he says he would love to see Cersei get taken out by a direwolf, for that to be her death because of Lady.
Yeah, that's funny.
I guess that was the first death she inflicted in the show. That would be closing it out nicely.
On account of Nymeria. Oh God, if Nymeria, that would be great.
Yeah, Nymeria got her. Yeah, you meant to get me, but I'm gonna get you.
So another thing I was wondering about, so Jon, later wishes to Sansa that Arya had been there to support him. Or he wishes to Arya, that Arya had been there to support him in the Great Hall scene with Sansa. So one, he doesn't really realize that she might not have supported you, Jon, so much. She might have been more on Sansa's side at this point in this particular conversation. But it also made me realize that if she had been in that scene, she would have been sharing a scene with Lyanna Mormont.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of that, and I hope that we have that to look forward to. That we see some scene with Arya's, been watching Lyanna and some women train. Still on that train. I want that. So one thing I was wondering was about that, but a question to pose is just, will there be a lot of people in general pushing for Jon to be king in the North and or of Westeros, this voraciously in the books? Because between, you have Lyanna Mormont and the Lords of the North, and Sam is pushing for it. And Sam is pushing for it. There's just a lot of pressure on him. And Jon just wants the humans to not die. And he just doesn't care about this dumb chair. But so I feel like those are themes that I think he'll be struggling with. We've already seen some of him dealing with duty and being elected to the Night's Watch as Lord Commander. And it'll just keep happening to him. He just keeps... getting titles thrown at him.
It's true, and that's a really good point because it's a segue just on its own, but also it segues into our next point really well, which is that he's correctly focused on the major threat, but there's a few things that he's missed because of it. He's so focused on it, he hasn't paid attention to the politics and how his decisions have affected other people. A perfect small example is their brief conversation about Lord Glover, where he's kind of upset that Lord Glover didn't keep his promise. But Sansa's like, well, you didn't keep your promise. So it's not like she's not taking Glover's side, but she is showing she's explaining his point of view, which is something Jon isn't necessarily great at, putting himself in other people's shoes.
Yeah.
And I think
maybe into their bodies.
But before we move on to this last bit about his reunion, I want to just one more thing about Arya. You wonder if how Arya's gonna do this in the books. Is she gonna admit to Jon that she's done all this killing? I wonder. I don't know. She might be a little shy about admitting that to him because he's, her big brother that and she could see in that moment that he's still kind of seeing her as a little sister. It was almost talking down to her just a little bit. What do you think about all this, Lady Gwyn?
Yeah, I think that's a really good segue because in that moment, it's really kind of sad. He still sees Arya and Bran. Not so much Sansa, he's a little bit further along the curve with her, but he still sees Arya and Bran as the little kids that he last saw all that time ago. So he's really very naive. It struck me in those reunions, or in the way he treats them. It's, he's just forgotten that all this time has elapsed and gone back to the way, if you see someone that you were close to after a long period of time has elapsed, you tend to just fall back into old habits. So, I mean, that's what's happening here. And so when he asked about Needle, and Arya says once or twice, and she looks pretty sad, when she says that. It's almost like I can't. She doesn't want to talk about it. It was the impression I got. And then, his not comprehending Bran's oddness. I really think he's underestimating the ways that all three of his siblings have evolved and what their capabilities are now. And, he's got quite a ways to go before he kind of figures out where they're all at right now.
Yeah, it really reminds me of Ned in a lot of ways. Ned was a wonderful protector. I have very few complaints about him in general, but if you want to get nitpicked, you could say he wasn't super aware of his kids as people, like what they were interested in, especially his daughters. Like Arya and Sansa, he says himself in the show, like, war is harder than daughters. It's because he's not very good at understanding what drives them as human beings. He didn't get Arya's. He kind of understood that Arya was like Lyanna, but he kind of was, you know what I mean? He kind of came around on that kind of slowly.
I mean, how much did he really understand Lyanna? We don't know.
Good point. Yeah, he may not have. That's a great point.
He may have loved her, but he may accepting of her, but still.
And he didn't understand why she didn't love Robert. He didn't get why she didn't want to be with Robert, and it was like, hello, like that should be kind of obvious, right? So
sure.
He's a little not shallow, but he doesn't get that. He doesn't understand like that. It seems like it's maybe more consistently applied to how he sees women. He doesn't get certain aspects of womanhood. Maybe I don't know. It's just
makes sense.
Men's roles are simpler in his mind. They're all get trained for war.
But yeah, in the scene, Arya calls Sansa the smartest person she's ever met, which one shows how little she underestimates. Like she has a good gauge of Sansa's worth and merit and all that. But two, it makes me wonder, what does Arya think of Bran?
What does Arya think of Bran?
What is her perspective on it? If she were to have a conversation about Bran, what would she say? Would she everyone has to have an opinion. Like, he's a little off, and I don't feel like anyone's really gotten concrete answers out of him or pressed him enough to be like, what's up with you? Yeah.
I think maybe there would be something that would be explored more in the books. Maybe more conversations with Bran could happen, and maybe that's what we see. Because remember earlier I was talking about how are we going to see Bran? Is it still going to be his POV? Well, it won't all be. Bran's not going to go through like 5 different POVs where he meets Sansa, that meets Arya. Like, some of that will be on the other side of it, and maybe most of it will be on the other side. Maybe most of it will be Jon. We'll get Jon's POV when he reunites with Bran, and we get Arya's POV when she reunites with Bran. We get Sansa's POV when she reunites with Bran, rather than it being on Bran's side, because that might be harder for George to write.
Yeah, that makes some sense.
For other reasons too, but just because of the difficulty, it might be easier to do with. And that's more of like our side. It's like more of like we're the people. We would be Sansa. Like, if it's Sansa and Bran having a conversation, we're going to be like Sansa because we're the human being that's a normal human being in a sense. So like, it would be kind of odd to have Bran's perspective on that. I mean, George could do it and he could pull it off, but I kind of lean the other way.
I also think it's like in these scenes, like we touched on before, it seems to set up this conflict between the trueborn Starks and Jon. But I can't really see Bran being party to any of that. He's not going to play with that.
No,
he'll put a kibosh on it and
goes against the whole uniting.
And so I absolutely don't think it will pan out. I think maybe there'll be a couple tense moments and some arguments or something, but that's about it. So I was wondering if there was a chance that it would, potentially be more of a conflict in the books where they have more time for it, that this will be more of a heart-wrenching or frustrating, or there will be some slight betrayal between these Starks.
Yeah. Good take.
I think that one of the things that's going to happen in the books, this is relative to the so-called Grand Northern Conspiracy, which also kind of answers what we were talking about earlier about people calling for Jon to be king in the North. I think you're going to have various groups that are actively trying to set them all against each other. Or, this one is for Sansa, this one is for Rickon, and this one's for Jon, or what have you. We've already seen this in the show, kind of with Littlefinger trying to set them against each other. But I really think the Starks are smarter than that. They don't really need to be reminded about the pack surviving and all that stuff. So I think it's going to be an external thing, people trying to drive them apart for whatever political reason. They know what their main focus needs to be, I think, for the most part of it. But we will have Jon's emotional conflict because of his attachment to Dany. And I think not even his political sort of, I don't think he views any of the politics as really important. I think it's more the question that Sansa posed to him: did you bend the knee because you wanted to save us or because you love her? That's, I think, going to be Jon's big conflict. And hey, guess what that is? That's the human heart in conflict with itself. So, there you go, figure.
This heart has more conflicting with it because it's been stabbed also.
Yes, right. It's incredibly conflicting.
This heart has already got a lot to work with. It's already leaky. So let's see here. Yeah, that's a great take, both of y'all. And we have a lot more on Jon and the Starks being pulled in different directions, and we have some parallels with that planned for the second, quote, half of this episode, however long we go tonight. So we're going to take a quick mid-roll break here, but real quick, another super chat from Chris Trombley, who says, Jaehaerys the First was not good with daughters either. Very good point. Yes, he was not. He's notably bad with his daughters.
Yeah, he was notably like, wow, Jaehaerys is so good. And then it's like, he also was like really, very buttoned up when it comes to their agency and their sexuality and all of this.
Yeah, very anti-progressive.
Yeah.
He's just like, girls.
Yeah. Something to do with, he did have an interesting style, how he was raised was, you could see some of it, but also not quite.
Yeah, right?
It's a great question, but it's interesting. I also wonder, Ned, growing up, he grew up with, Jon Arryn, what girls was he around too often?
Good point. Yeah. Which girls were there, and also
really. He didn't really grow up with Lyanna for a lot of it.
Being the opposite of his brother, kind of like being the non-womanizer of the of the family. Okay, so let's do some mid-roll shout-outs, and we'll come back with a lot more about Jon, and we'll talk more about Sam and Dany and the reveal of his parentage, because that certainly throws a monkey wrench into this whole politics thing. And man, like I said, we got some really fun parallels for you. I think the second half of this stream today is going to be even more chock full than the first half. So don't go anywhere. I want to give a shout out to a new podcast called Vanished, and it's about Amelia Earhart. It's called Vanished Amelia Earhart, in fact, and it's a limited series on the life and disappearance of Amelia Earhart. The host, Chris Williamson, spends the first half of the show on her contributions to her field and to the advancement of women, and the second half, Kohel Kohi, master of the bow, called Sunpiercer, yes, this is her podcast, is the legal analyst for the show, and she is going to have a mock trial. That's part of the show, is they're going to hold a mock trial to test all the evidence regarding Amelia's disappearance, with guest speakers, quote-unquote, testifying on a variety of topics related to this mock trial. So that should be a lot of fun, and I believe it's either out now or about to be out. So check that out. Of course, as you heard the Patreon name, Jennifer is a supporter of the show, and so I was very happy to give her show a shout out, but it sounds really interesting too. So definitely check it out. Also, thanks to Vorsaki, wielder of a Valyrian steel Arak with the Dragonbone hilt, and Kokavo the Tamer, wielder of the Wildfire Whip Gehenna. Also, shout outs to our sellsword captains. That would include Peter Blaze of the Emerald Isle, captain of the Werewood Wanderers, to long lives, quick deaths, cold beer, and warm women. Daegron, marshal of the Axe, is captain of the Red Tide, resistance is futile. Chiron Callsbane is captain of the Stone Shields, the torrent breaks upon the stone. Haema Helminth is captain of the Whispering Children, dead men tell no secrets. Shepard is the Shepherd of Essos, all men are sheep before the shepherd, heir to the Whispering Children. Lady Lajara Dajo is the Iron Lily, Master Archer, Castellan of the Summer Island Keep, Arboreal Point, captain of the all-female Wailing Widows, Women and Children First. Cody the Crimson is Bastard of Bracken, captain of the Red Waste Exiles and recruiter of the Free Folk. Cameron the Hammer of Hornwood is captain of the English Lions with the motto, honor is the reward of virtue. Lord Brandon Brewer of Castle Blackroon is captain of the Shadow Wolves. Our steel is cold, our vengeance colder. And Black Alex Sand is the Bastard of Spears, leader of the Bermuda Vanguard. And of course, we did the Sellsword Captains today in honor of the introduction of the Golden Company to us to the TV show. So let's move on. We have a question from our very own Lord of the Bricks and Castle Crimson Light. Does anyone else feel like Benioff and Weiss are the hosts at a party that ran too long, flicking the lights on and off and kicking everybody out? It feels like they have a checklist and just crossing the items off one by one. I was looking forward to those reunions and introductions, and it all just feels so rushed to me. Sorry, I'm missing the live stream. See you all at Ice and Fire Con. Yes, see you all at Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
See you at Ice and Fire Con.
I do agree, to be perfectly honest with you, and I think they knew that they have a window in which that they're hot. They're going to get Star Wars films, and they did, and they want to do their own projects, and this is hard work. I think that I really, really wish that they could do what other people have done in the past, which is pass on the reins to another showrunner. Yeah. You set the tone. Like you can switch it up. There can be multiple for a show like this. You can pass it off to 3 people. Don't get me started on that. But no, you make the decision you make. They felt like it was their baby, just as like in a way that George does, and they had trouble doing that. Which I can relate, I guess.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. They're racing towards the big plot points and having to skip a lot of the character moments, which is part of why we have a lot to look forward to with the books, because we're going to get all that, and we're not going to, it wasn't, it's still coming. It just won't be on TV.
Yeah.
So I agree, but I guess I would say I'm not surprised. I don't think a lot of people are surprised.
And me personally, I do think that within our lifetimes, we will get another adaptation of A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah, it's possible.
In whatever method.
Maybe it'll be animated.
Cool. But either way, I think we'll have another shot. I personally...
I hope so, too.
So
anything to add to that, Lady Gwyn?
No, I think it's right on. We've been talking about pacing and bullet points and stuff like that for a while. That's when they made that decision not to go 10 seasons for whatever reasons, personal and otherwise, here we are.
Right on. Yep. Okay. All right, so let's move on to, we have a lot of things we may have to cut a few things from this episode. Yeah. We have so much we didn't get to.
We have a
lot. We can save Jamie Bran for later, because it just basically started to happen. So we can save a lot of that.
I was say I love the Bran memes.
The Bran memes are really fun.
They're really, really very funny. I like Bran a whole lot more now that he's just a really funny meme. So I will say that.
And we'll say that Jon is definitely channeling we're getting some history here. He's the new king who knelt. Torrhen Stark knelt to Aegon the Conqueror. And if anyone is like Aegon the Conqueror, it's Daenerys Targaryen. So that is quite a fit. And I don't know that there's much else we can take from it. Torrhen's family was against him kneeling, but he got his way. And the only other thing I could think of that's relevant was that a sellsword company formed from Northerners who weren't happy with this, and they left. But I don't see how that's going to... I mean, maybe people will flee because they're scared of the undead, but that's got nothing to do with Jon.
Yeah.
So this is pretty similar. I don't know there's a whole lot to say other than to draw attention to that parallel. It's pretty cool. Okay, so the dragon ride. Let's talk about that briefly. Yeah. I guess I never even considered the possibility that, or not seriously anyway, that he would ride a dragon before finding out who he is. On the other hand, Brown Ben Plum, we got that spot, which has long been pretty clear foreshadowing for someone else to have their dragon blood detected. Maybe that's what happens. And frankly, we sort of got it already. The dragons kind of reacted positively to Jon. On multiple occasions, he was allowed to touch them. They seemed comfortable with him, which is a little, it's not explicit, but it's kind of there. What do y'all think?
Go ahead, yeah.
I was just going to say that, I've always thought of it as being like we would see the dragons reacting as a way to tell if someone had Targaryen blood, but not that they would just ride the dragon without, investigating like, wow, this dragon really likes me. I have Targaryen blood. I saw it happening in a certain way.
Yeah.
Like you, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
this great imagery of the waterfall at the end of the scene is really cool.
Yeah, I will say that, despite I'm going to give this spiel because certain people specifically wanted to make sure that I complained on behalf of everyone. But and I want to say at least we got some lovely imagery here. There's good things. I can be positive. But this dragon riding scene ultimately infuriates me due to just the continued idiocy of the idea of just holding on to a dragon, as well as the dragon riding CGI itself, which in my opinion looks poor now, and I don't think it's going to hold up very well in the future. But I'm going to tell myself, and this is in response as well to, we got a super chat here from Chris Trombley who said, will we see dragon saddles and whips? No, they've passed that point already.
Yeah.
But I'm going to choose to believe that they have sticky horns that activate when someone they like gets on them. And
that's how you know.
So there we go. That's what I'm going to tell myself, just because it is completely ridiculous to imagine staying on it. So, other people have complained about the tone of this scene, a little bit. It's a little bit rom-com-y. It didn't bother me quite as much. I personally really liked seeing Dany a little bit looser and more lighthearted for once, She was also, very smiley when they first arrived at Winterfell. If she's kind of in a smug way almost. But all of this painted this picture of someone who is happy, in love, feels like things are going her way. And I don't know, I liked Dany more a little bit in this episode, or I felt she had more dimensions to her than I normally do.
Right on.
I guess.
And Lady Gwyn, you had some great notes on the cave and the callback to a grit here.
Yeah, I did. That, I think everybody probably felt that when she said we could stay here 1,000 years. It is. I had the quote here where Ygritte says, "I don't ever want to leave this cave, Jon Snow, not ever," in A Storm of Swords. So I think that Jon's relationship with Ygritte does in some way prefigure his relationship with Dany, especially if he bends the knee to Dany. You have him breaking his vows with a woman. Then a similar, it's a different way of doing it, but there's, it's a situation where this woman comes along and convinces him to do something that he probably shouldn't be doing. And then if Dany's going to die, it could end up very much like Ygritte's death when she calls back to the cave. We should have stayed in that cave. I told you so. And he says, we'll go back. You're not going to die. And she says, oh, you know nothing, Jon Snow, and dies in his arms, which I have to say that I have feeling that it's going to go that way.
And some people criticize this aspect. I think kind of maybe loyalty to Ygritte, or maybe also not liking the rom-com feeling or what have you of it. I'm sure there are different reasons they criticized it, but I think that this idea of someone being suddenly reminded of a lost loved one is one that really rings true for a lot of people. It's this jarring feeling at best, and it made me feel for Jon in that moment, and he plays it off really well, and still gives her a kiss and doesn't say, actually, you just made me think of my dead girlfriend, which kind of ruins the mood. And I wonder how much he's told her about Ygritte. How much have they told each other about their past lovers in that period? Dany's had she's lost, Drogo, and he's lost Ygritte, and they could have bond about these losses, but we don't see their bedroom talk, when they're, I'm sure they stay up late some night and have talked about some things, maybe. I don't know. So I didn't mind it so bad. Ultimately, Jon, it's really sad, and I think that's how it will be in the books. That even if he has a romance with Daenerys, it's gonna go poorly, just like his past romance.
Yeah, I kind of agree, because it's and this is something we are going to get into a little bit later as well, talking about some of these parallels that Jon has, and talking about how something you brought up earlier, Lady Gwyn, with his heart being in conflict, and how that might be what Bran is trying to avoid. He's trying to keep Jon from having that conflict. But more on that later.
We had a quote here too, Davos is trying to set up this marriage. He's suggesting that they get married.
Yeah.
And they bring up What if the Seven Kingdoms, for once in their whole shit history, were ruled by a just woman and an honorable man? Well, Naomi Makes Art, who we use her artwork in our episodes, you'll recognize that name, had a funny tweet where she brought up, what about Jaehaerys and Alysanne?
Yeah, there's just different history. I mean,
Yes,
there's a
different
Maegor
history,
the
it's
Third
true.
in this world.
But I still like the idea, to think about that. Anyways,
Yeah.
worth mention. And another thing that I wanted to bring up here, however, is we see that scene, right, with them kissing, okay?
Mhm.
And Drogon and Rhaegal are watching, and it's comical, haha. And my mind was spinning about whether the dragons would maybe take some cues, some hints from their riders, because this is each of their riders getting busy with each other, and so whether that would make it more possible for them to mate.
I like considering the idea of them mating. I'm not so sure that this would have anything to do with it. I think they're just creatures, and
I think they are just
instinct
creatures.
takes over. But it's cool. I like the idea though.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. I had the same thought during the episode.
About, like, I don't know, like, just they're watching their master, their owners, their riders kiss, and then they're like, oh, I don't know, because dragons change, they change gender.
Sure,
I don't know,
yeah.
change sex.
Super chat from Dornish Dan. Valyrian Velcro for your dragon riding needs. Yes. That's fun.
We can answer a question that was hotly contested during some of our live streams too here.
Oh yeah, the CGI. Yeah,
the CGI. When we went over the trailer, people were really arguing whether they would not add the CGI, and yes, they would. Here's a shot from the trailer that shows Rhaegal. You clearly can see no one on Rhaegal. If you look at the next shot I have here, this is the exact same still. Like, I got the exact same shot, screen capped it, and you can very clearly see Jon. And it's easy enough for them to do. I was on board. I was like, of course they could do that, and they should do that.
Yeah.
Wanted to clarify.
All right. Super chat from Callista Cross. Hi again. Excited to see you guys at Con of Thrones. Do you think we'll get a small Sansa / the Hound reunion, or is that too much to ask for? I figure we got to get a line or two. They gave Arya and the Hound a 30-second reunion. It's so easy to do. So I hope we get it. But there's a chance we don't. But I think that would be an oversight. It seems, because it would be so quick.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Sam, Dany, Jorah, and then Sam and Jon. That's a really huge part of this episode, and it obviously has huge implications for the books. It starts with Dany confessing, not knowing that she's confessing. Not Randall Tarly. It starts to dawn on her. She has no idea what's happening. And it was a pretty cool way for it to happen. And, Lady Gwyn, you have a note here. Do you think that maybe something like this could happen too? Maybe Randall Tarly could be killed by Dany in the books as well?
Yeah, because I think we expect that Randall Tarly will declare for Aegon the Sixth, let's call him, which is confusing now in terms of the show. But but if that's the case, and then we think that we'll see Dany and Aegon facing off, then I don't see why you wouldn't have something very similar happening in the books. And I also wanted to add that, for what it's worth, I think that Dany was very disturbed when she realized in that scene, I know what what we're about to talk about, because you have this, but my opinion is that she is visually
disturbed,
you can see her face kind of fall, and then you can almost see the wheels turning, where she's like, well, I guess I better eat this pile of horseshit, because if I do not confess to this right now, he's going to find out later, and doesn't get any better. So,
and I'm picturing like a Westeros Veep version. Just what Dany says behind the scenes, just foul mouthed. I don't know. That is very funny. Yeah, and so anyway, with this, there is an interesting interview here to Joanna Robinson, who we've had on our show. She does Storm of Spoilers, but for this series, she's doing a series for Vanity Fair called Still Watching. And John Bradley, who plays Sam, said he's talking about Daenerys in depth, and he's a bit critical of her, and he said that after everything she's gone through and that she's withstood, the person she is now, she doesn't seem to have that heart anymore. She seems much more, in that scene especially, she seems psychopathic almost, and she seems to have regressed in terms of morality so much that I don't know what Jorah thinks of her anymore. Personally, I did originally think of her as seeming disturbed, so I agreed with you. But when I read his take, I rewatched it and tried to look at it from his perspective. And it, one, maybe speaks to how poorly Sam will continue to think of Daenerys as the season goes on. But on a rewatch, she does seem a little bit like, damn it, it's always something. I can't do anything right. Less than she maybe does seem actually torn up about Sam himself. She might still be upset for herself. I can't do anything right. Yeah. Then she does feel heartfelt for him. But I certainly don't think that she seems psychopathic almost.
No, that's too far.
But it again speaks to how Sam is not super fond of Dany, I guess.
Yeah, psychopathic is definitely the wrong word. There's no argument there.
I think he might have meant sociopathic.
Yes, but regardless, the idea that...
That's closer.
It's subtly different because it doesn't necessarily imply, an evil intent. It just means more self-centered.
She doesn't care,
she's just approaching this as it's all about me.
Yeah.
So, and that could be his perception of it.
Real quick, Lady Gwyn, when you have a chance, if you could toggle your camera off and on at the top. You're coming in and out a little bit. Otherwise, we can move on. Thanks.
Okay.
So I never really, like I said at the beginning, I never really considered that this would be the way it would go in the books. But it's compelling for a lot of reasons. The more we dug into this, the more parallels we found, the more things that line up really well, the more things that work, and the more things that would create historical parallels, which we are always on the lookout for. And it creates so many of them that, it looks really strong. For one thing, it immediately casts Sam's manipulation of the Lord Commander's election in a majorly different light. It becomes foreshadowing for him manipulating a bigger situation. And of course, he has experience with this already. It makes him quite a bit like Bittersteel. I'm going to call him Bitter Sam. And that it describes him pretty well. He's mad. He's angry at Dany. He's bitter over his family's death, and he's lashing back out at Daenerys. And it's going to have some sort of impact. Go ahead.
I just wanted to. I was curious if we wanted to pause it, if people could think about any other characters that Jon is close to that could. With the law of conservation of characters, the idea that it isn't Sam, that there's someone else close to him in general.
Yeah, I thought about that.
I just wanted to pose it to the chatters
in
general to think about in general when we bring up these things.
Well, the thing that really hit me was that Bran brought up that no, he's your brother and he's your friend. He's the person that you can that makes the most sense to hear it from because it's going to be hard to hear. I think a lot of us have long thought, Howland Reed could be the one to break the secret, but Jon doesn't know Howland Reed. He might respect him because he was his father's friend, but the idea of Sam being the one to tell him is very compelling for those reasons. And but I'd never considered that Sam would do it in anger, which is really neat. So here's so many things let me list off a bunch of things that become parallels if this plays out this way in the books, and there are already parallels now in the show in their own way. So. First of all, I coined the term Firebrand for Fireball and to go along with Bitter Sam. And then we have San Shiera Sea Stark for Sansa and Shiera Sea Star. So imagine Sam going to tell Sansa about this. What is her reaction going to be? Just think about that. Seems like she wouldn't be hard to bring over onto his side for Jon should be in charge here. Because she already kind of wanted that. So it would make sense. So this is a comparison to Daemon Blackfyre rising up against Daeron the Good. It's the same situation where you would have a king, a claimant rising up against someone they had already knelt to. So Jon has already bent the knee to Dany. So this would, if he does rise up against her, which, to be fair, I do not expect to happen. But the parallel situation still exists. You have Jon playing the role of Daemon Blackfyre here, which fits really well because his name has long been thought to be Aemon. Of course, the show is calling him Aegon, which is definitely possible in the books as well. But Aemon, Daemon, you can see that's pretty close. He dresses in black because he's a Night's Watchman, so Blackfyre, you're going to get that. And then you have this bastard situation where Daemon was a bastard, but he was Targaryen on both sides, but he was legitimized. And Jon, in the book, we don't know whether Rhaegar and Lyanna will have actually been married in the books or not, so he may or may not be a bastard. So they're both kind of like bastard-ish. They have that thing hanging over them. Then we have this fun kind of comparison to Daemon the Second Blackfire, who went by the nickname Jon the Fiddler. Jon Snow is not Jon Snow's real name either, just like Jon the Fiddler is not Jon the Fiddler's real name. Now, even more parallels here. One of the main complaints against Daeron the Good was that he was too friendly with women and Dornish and musicians and maesters. Well, that's similar-ish to the complaints leveled at Dany, that she's bringing in foreigners, that she's bringing in, Dornish. And in fact, Dornish are part of her army, so that's a thing as well. And that's a lot of parallels, right, guys? Like, that is a lot. That lines up, all of a sudden, this Daemon Blackfire story, which lined up pretty well with some other stories, now could really line up well with Jon, which would just not only fit really well, but just be really cool. So in that sense, it's got my head spinning because it creates so many book parallels. It's like, wow, that is a lot. So
remember Kat warning Rob again about Daemon Blackfire. This is the first time Daemon Blackfire is mentioned in the book series.
True.
Is in reference to Jon being named Rob's heir.
So the confounding part here is, even though it lines up so well, we're missing the whole Phagon plot from the show, and some of that could be what we're seeing here. This could be like parts of the Phagon plot mixed with parts of Dany Jon's thing. So, what do you like? How do we think that Howland Reed could fit into the books in a way that he hasn't fitted to the show? Because obviously he's not that likely to appear. He definitely could, but I'm not holding out hope.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, let's run with this idea that maybe the last stand happens at Harrenhal.
Okay, yeah.
It's not. So then you're not that far off from, where Howland could appear there. I mean, his first recorded appearance in the story was at Harrenhal. So I think there's a possibility that he just shows up and he has some information. I expect at that point we'll have been getting information from various sources, kind of like Bran and Sam pooled their bits of information. I think it'll be a lot more different bits that we'll be pooling.
If I could jump in just for a second, you make a great point about Harrenhal. If that's where humanity has sort of fled to, well, the neck won't be inhabitable anymore. It'll be frozen just like a lot of the north. So he'll have had to leave Greywater Watch by then if he hasn't already.
Right. Yeah, it's a good point. And they'll be able to just storm right through there. So
yeah.
But I wanted to say that it's just thinking about that in terms of this reveal in this episode, and it didn't occur to me in the first time I watched it, but then afterwards, thinking about that, it did kind of highlight Mira Reed's kind of unceremonious departure from in the show.
Yeah,
it made me wonder. Where is she gone? Is she ever coming back, or was that just kind of it? She just rode off into the sunset, and that's the end of that. I mean, there's a few characters like that, but I'd like to see them come back. So that's just a kind of sidebar.
We knew some of the actors that would be back this season, and I don't remember if she was on the list, and we don't want to say if she was, even if we did know, because we're not talking about it. But I maybe should look it up for my own knowledge.
Yeah, that would certainly give a lot away if we did. One parallel I missed here that I meant to list, I skipped over by accident, is that you have parallels to both the Blackfire Rebellions and the Dance of the Dragons, kind of subtly referenced here, with Jon having a green dragon and Dany having a black. And then you have the other part, which I already mentioned, the Blackfires, Jon's parallel to Blackfire, to Daemon Blackfire, and of course Dany being the red dragon. She's already just the representative of House Targaryen, so that does not need further explanation. Okay, so let's move on. Shay, you have a note here about Sam talking to his family.
He needs to write a letter to his mother and sister, for one. And then when are we going to check in with Gilly and little Sam? I feel like he should go run and cry on Gilly's shoulder for a bit and get a good cry in. Which is one of the things I love about Sam as a character. And you know, in the books, he's a character. He's a man who cries, you know, and he's made fun of for it, but he does, and I like that in him, and I liked him welling up, and obviously he tries to control it in that particular situation because he's in front of the Queen Jorah, and he wants to control himself. But I like to think that he, you know, had a nice cry for a minute. He did before he went and did anything else. I don't know. Will you go back up real quick, Aziz? Yeah. With Sam here. I totally. Yeah, I lost my train of thought. Oh, well.
Well, if you think of it, we'll come back to it. If we consider Jon's reaction, I think we'll hold off on most of Jon's reaction because we haven't really gotten to see most of it yet. His reaction is kind of cut short. He's just now begun to process. He hasn't even talked about how this affects his relationship with Dany yet, so we can hold off on some of that since we're a little short on time. We'll skip that from now.
Point from Patrick Sponaggle, though. Jon sure does need some ghost cuddles right now.
Sam needs to go cuddle Gilly. Jon can go cuddle Ghost. Yeah. And
there's a nice bit of cinematography here too. When Jon finds out, if you look in the background there. Man, I guess I didn't get it into the episode, but it moves from having Ned's statue in the background to having Lyanna's statue in the background as he learns.
That's cool.
Brighten it up a bit to see it, but it's definitively it looks like that, so that's pretty neat.
Good job, show. That was well done.
Yeah, it's like that.
One theory suggested here by our co-writer Joe Buckley is that maybe Jon will tell people, his friends, not to spread this news. The problem may be that it might be too late. Like if Sansa Sam tells Sansa and she tells other people, then the cat will be out of the bag, so to speak. But that's interesting. But it might be that might be a good way to go for Jon. Because we know, I think all of us agree that Jon does not want to take the throne. And this may be a way for him to avoid being forced into it or something.
Well, the one thing that I think we have to remember in terms of the books is that Jon was, just like Bran, raised on the story of Rhaegar kidnapping and raping Lyanna. You know, that whole thing we see early on. Robert was betrothed to marry her, but Prince Rhaegar carried her off and raped her. I mean, Jon's not going to be able to forget that instantly. That if that was a lifetime of thinking that's what happened, he's going to hear this news and just there's going to be this huge cognitive dissonance for him.
And of course,
very likely.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
And of course, there's that moment where he straight up thinks he is an incest baby. Your mother was Lyanna Stark, and Jon's like,
"Wait,
oh, no.
Does that mean?" It's like, no, it wasn't your parents that committing incest. It's you committing incest. What a wave of realization there.
He is still an incest baby, just not quite as directly.
Yeah, it's true.
A little further back. there's always incest in Westeros.
Incesteros. A couple of super chats from Chris Trombley. Thoughts about Robb and Aaron of the Vale reunion? I don't think we're going to see him again at all, to be frank. And it's funny, I mentioned briefly on our show only review that we're doing a fantasy. We're on the Verge's Game of Thrones Fantasy League, and you draft characters. And Robb and Aaron I ranked last out of all the characters for fantasy value. I don't expect him to have sex, to kill anyone, to be resurrected, to tell a joke. Die. Yeah, but it has to be memorable. Yes, that has to be memorable for it to get points. I think rating him last was correct. And also, fun thought, Bitterstale saying to people what Davos said about Jon. Not because of his birthright. He has no birthright. He's a damn bastard. Yeah, that's right. Jon should just be turning that around. That's how he should be selling the fact that doesn't deserve the throne. He's like, I know, I'm a bastard. She's got the birthright. Okay, so the next little section, brief section, we're calling the Aryasenal, because Arya is really, really well equipped these days. She has so many weapons, she doesn't even have time to explain them all to Jon. needle and the cat's paw dagger, and now she's got this staff thing that Ashaya is going to put on screen, I believe. Or did we not have that one?
We had it in the
You
first
didn't have that one?
episode.
Okay.
We just had it already in episode 1, so I was like, why do it again?
It looks like it has two ends, maybe. It's kind of hard to tell. I think it's got two blades on it.
Okay.
Isn't that the same thing that Simeon Star Eyes?
Exactly, yeah.
Really
so that's what gave me those vibes.
You were like, that isn't two ends after all, when I showed you the image.
But looking again, it looks like there isn't a blade on one end, but it looks like there's a slot for holding something, like maybe the dagger or something like that. We'll have to see.
Valyrian steel on one side and obsidian on the other.
Yeah, we'll have to see. But I definitely, like you said, Lady Gwyn, it gave me Simeon Star Eyes vibes. So, which makes it more likely.
I really appreciated. She says, like, here's my wish, right? 2 things. 1, think of her wishes granted by Jaqen there. She always has her wishes, so I just brought me back to that.
That's funny. Good call.
But also, I really wish, like Gendry, I wanted her wish to be like, my wish is for you to distribute this to the best members of the army.
Everyone has
one. He doesn't have time to maybe get everyone, but at least like some people should have some spears with dragon glass and all that. And as always, I'm still very much on board for Arya killing the Night King in the show.
Yeah, I'm still there too. Still like that. Dark Sister backstabbing. And we got some foreshadowing of Jon saying, how did you sneak up on me? And if she doesn't at least backstab a walker, if she doesn't backstab the Night King, she's got to backstab one of the walkers. She's got to backstab somebody that sneaks up on.
Jon's going to get turned and she's going to have to.
She's going to have to do it.
Be twice dead.
So we have this shot of a dragon glass axe, which is pretty badass.
This is Sandor's axe here. This is a little shout out to makinggameofthrones.com, which is, the official, making of website. But they have always some really interesting, like better, images of costumes and weaponry and stuff like that. And it's after every episode, I highly recommend throughout the week checking Making Game of Thrones for some good interviews and photography.
The idea of dragonglass axes in the books, maybe. I think no. I think that the show is taking a few liberties with obsidian, which I don't mind because George did too. It's not a complaint. It's just pointing to a difference.
Mm-hmm. Someone's gonna get that Valyrian steel axe, though.
That's where I'm going. I think it's because Valyrian steel has been foreshadowed more as a thing in the books. I think that's where the show is that's where the show and books diverge a bit. Is that no doubt dragonglass will be important in the books, but I think it'll be more of a mix of dragonglass weapons and some Valyrian steel weapons, and the show is kind of shoving the Valyrian steel off to the side. It's the law of conservation of special metals, special materials, of fantasy materials. Yeah. But we sure did get a lot of mileage out of the law of conservation of X, didn't we?
Yes. It says here we go, from Vanity Fair, Joanna Robinson's interview with Tommy Dunn.
Cool.
It is specifically that calls it that it's a showstopper weapon, and Tommy Dunn says there's one creation in season 8 that is absolutely phenomenal. It'll be a showstopper. That was great to finish. It was great to make, great to design, and that it was able to be reverse engineered and made into 2 different items.
Whoa! So a showstopper, not a book stopper. So that's a clue.
It says it looks like a spear-like weapon that can unscrew into being 2 short-range stabbing weapons as well.
Cool.
A double-ended spear that can act as 2 daggers. One is the dragon glass, and as people wonder if what is on the other side, exactly. There's some options, but that is better to hear Tommy Dunn's. Again, why I said that you guys should check out Joanna Robinson's Still Watching podcast coverage, because she is interviewing the cast and crew.
Right.
I just see in the notes here that I wrote, Arya's staff gave me some
Simeon Star Eyes vibes.
Exactly. That's the sentence that I did not finish typing.
I knew when
you knew. Yeah, you already knew what I was going to write.
And somehow I just
you got there too. You knew. You had the same idea.
The vibe. I had one more thing about this scene. It's Arya, unrelated to weapons, but we were speaking of wishes. She says she has a wish. I cannot pass this by without commenting on the Princess Bride reference, where Gendry says to Arya, "As you wish, my lady," which is so obviously a nod to Princess Bride.
Yes, it was very nice. I liked that reference to it. I like that's, Gendry's awkward compliments to Arya in general. A nice little sweet interlude for the two of them, I think.
And George dropped another maybe subtle Princess Bride reference in the histories there with the Shrouded Lord and the Dread Pirate Robert, because it's the Shrouded Lord is just a different person that takes up that mantle, just like the Dread Pirate Robert. That's cool. Of course, like that's sort of a real thing too, but it makes sense. Like, if I can call myself this famous dead person that no one knows is dead, then I get to just, take his reputation and people are going to be afraid of me right away. Makes sense for pirates to do that sort of thing. Anyway, that's not off topic at all. No, not even a little.
Got a
super chat from Vanessa Lay. Love your reviews. Book to Show is my favorite. So wonderful to be back for the final season. Thank you for all your amazing content. Well, thank you very much, Vanessa. That's very generous of you, and we're very happy to be back with all y'all as well. It is super fun playing with this new material, and all the discussions it is generating are exactly what we hoped for. Okay, let's probably don't have a whole much more time for the North. Let's try to blaze through some of this King's Landing stuff.
2 hours.
Yeah. Just barely, though, because we started late, and it's okay. So
yeah, we did. You're right, actually.
King's Landing. Let's talk about Yara's rescue, which it was a very brief captivity, right?
Yeah, it was mainly just an expository tool, specifically in this episode.
Yeah.
It was another one of those, like, okay, we get it.
But we got those cool cameos, right?
Yeah, we got to see Mac and Martin Starr.
Wasn't that didn't they say Dennis was in there too? Rolling Stone said Dennis was in there too.
Okay, I don't know.
I couldn't see him.
I couldn't get to a clear shot of him, regardless.
In any case, it was fun to have that. But so this is an interesting adaptation because the show has gone had to go their own way on some of this because they did so many different things with Stannis. But I don't think Euron's very likely to capture Yara in the books. But Yara is captured by Stannis. And that captivity just so happens to include Theon. So the idea of them escaping together could be the parallel here.
However, the idea of them escaping to go do these particular things doesn't seem quite like they're placed at this point to do that,
it's
to
tricky
want to do that,
unpack
to have that motivation. But there's other things they can do along the way.
Yeah, so like in the show here, Theon heads north after rescuing Yara, but in the books, they're already there. I don't know if they're going to leave and then come back, or if they just leave and don't come back, or... but there is something that's maybe relevant to the books here. At the very least, I think there's possibly several things relevant, but one comment Yara makes that I think could be very relevant, and in general, well, let me say this first before going forward. The whole comment about islands and a place to hide if Westeros is overrun. She's like, well, maybe people will have to flee to the islands. That is something I could definitely see happening in the books. Yeah. And in the show, they're just doing the law of conservation of Westerosi islands here, because there's quite a few other islands to go to.
We talk about all the dead things in the water thing, and it's never been clear to me exactly how much they it seems like they generally cannot cross these large bodies of water like that.
But maybe small ones, yeah.
And they could cause issues for trying to get to the islands and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there's specific, there's we saw there's reasons why water seems to make us it stops them for the most part. That's not unreasonable. So when we heard that in the show, my ears perked up, I guess.
Okay, yeah, it does make sense. So this was like I would guess that Bear Island. No, they're not going to go to Bear Island. It's going to be too cold. Skagos, maybe same problem. But the Sisters, that might still be too cold. But Witch Isle and the Shields and the Arbor and Tarth, those are places where humanity could go hide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now. But you had, and of course, sorry, Lady Gwyn, I was about to segue to you, but one other thing real quick. If the foreshadowing in the book seems to be that there'll be this Torgon the Latecomer plot, that the King's Moots will be challenged because Theon wasn't able to participate, and he should have been able to participate. So they're on the grounds that would be the grounds that they could kind of nullify the result. Lady Gwyn, go ahead. You had a lot of thoughts on this and some other things.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's going to be very important, Torgon the Latecomer. But I am more of the mind that that's something that Asha wants to do. In other words, she'll present it. She'll go and she'll say, we have to invalidate this King's Moot because my brother wasn't here, sort of thing. I don't think it's necessarily something that Theon will do or will want to do, because we know he has this. Just like in the show, they presented it really clearly. He has that kind of being torn between the Starks and Greyjoys. And I've always felt like in the books, something along the lines of what's happening in the show, that he's going to go back to the Starks, this sort of search for redemption. I mean, we saw him almost join the Night's Watch. So at one point in the books, I wondered if he's going to do that. That fits with him going north here. And in the show, I was very interested to see him using a bow and arrow, because there's been this long-standing debate about whether Theon in the books can still operate a bow and arrow. That was his big skill. He was an archer. When we did our Theon episode, we argued that he could, and that not only could he, but that he would go to the Wall or to Winterfell or wherever and do something to something important to save Jon, that he would use a weirwood and dragonglass bow to do something very important. Now, that would actually channel, it would be a callback to Brandon Snow's offer to kill the Conqueror's dragons with the weirwood bow and arrow. So what we're talking about me and be the one who kills the ice dragon, and what a holy heck redemptive moment that would be if he's the one to kill the ice dragon. So
a hell holy moment. Whole holty. I was trying too hard with that one. That's a great theory. I love it. Yeah. And then like, what do you think? You think there's probably not that likely in the show though for it to go that way?
I mean, it's
for Theon to do it. Maybe someone else. Like, yeah.
I mean, it could. He's going there. They've shown him with his bow and arrow. They've shown him. He actually, so he was in the lead, and so if we assume that he was the one to shoot the first arrow that they show in that scene, that went right through a guy's eye. So
yeah, he is a great shot. That's true.
Yeah.
That's a great point, actually. Yeah. So that scene does reveal that he definitely can. Not that he lost fingers in the show, but it does show that he is still. It reminds us that the dude can shoot a bow.
So if you want to wonder about, is that one of the bullet points? Here we go. You know, like, is he going to shoot the ice dragon through the eye with the dragonglass? You know. Tipped arrow? Yeah.
So. All right, let's talk about Bronn real quickly. I don't think that this plot is super likely to happen in the books the way it's laid out here, but it's not unlikely that Cersei could try to have Tyrion and or Jaime assassinated. I doubt it's the same person sent after both of them. I doubt it's with a crossbow, but she could turn on Jaime when he turns on her. I could see that, and she's obviously already wants to kill Tyrion, so that's nothing weird about that. But we already had a version of this in the show of Cersei sending a kettle black. Well, that never actually happened. Cersei wanted to send a kettle black to kill Jon. Instead, we got the Bolton sending Locke, which is, I guess, the parallel there. Jon didn't even know that Locke was going to try to kill him. He's like, oh, that Locke dude seemed like he was pretty capable. Oh, he was killed. Oh, well. He had no idea. So, any thoughts on this? Any thoughts on the idea of Jon, or not Jon, but Tyrion or Jaime being assassinated? Or, I mean, not that they would succeed, but that Cersei does something like this?
I mean, I could see her wanting to, although I don't think Bronn will be the one to do it. I don't think he would even. I don't think he's really even considering it. I question, though, Cersei, what the reason why she's doing this, because she had them both in her power, and she had that little scene with each one of them in the last episode of the last season that, you know, where she could have had either one of them killed. She had them both kind of menaced by Sir Gregor.
Yeah.
And then let them go. So why then turn around and send an assassin after them?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm just pondering.
Yeah, I think that's all we have at this point. Yeah. Well, let's move on to Cersei then. There's not a whole lot to say about that Bronn plot, especially not more than we already covered on Monday. So Cersei, like we said earlier, her pregnancy is definitely possible in the books. She's got her dress. There's this scene of her drinking she's drinking just like she is in the show, and it's ambiguous whether she's pregnant in the books because her dresses are starting to not fit. So it could be the drinking, but it could be the pregnancy. So, Lady Gwyn, what do you think? There's a lot here to unpack.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, I alluded to this earlier. I think her drinking in the books is kind of explained um, by her being clueless. I mean, the pregnancy idea, I just think she's kind of clueless in the books, and she's arrogant enough to assume that she's controlling whatever her risk factors are. So uh, I think that's the way that'll go. But in the show, we wondered if this whole thing was a ruse all along, especially when Sansa says to Tyrion, "You didn't believe her." Then we started. She could have played Tyrion right from the start, and she could have played Jaime. She would have been playing Jaime in order to try and manipulate him into staying, and Tyrion in order to manipulate him into leaving, along with his pet dragon queen and her dragons. Yeah. Like, okay, maybe if I can convince them to leave, that's just sort of damage control at that point.
Let me jump in a sec. There's a little bit of confusion from the some material that not leaked from the future, but leaked from scripts that weren't used from last season. And there's some notes in those scripts that seem to indicate that Cersei was not trying to fool Tyrion. And which means that she was pregnant. Plus there's that clue where Jaime walks in the room and he can't hear what they're saying, but the dialogue says that Qyburn is asking they're talking about the pregnancy. Yeah. And it doesn't make any sense for them to be whispering about it for no one to hear if it's not real.
Right.
But you're right that all that stuff about manipulation is still in play, at least to some degree.
So it's right. Like I say, like, there's no reason that she wouldn't. So she's pregnant.
Yeah.
There's no reason why she wouldn't use a pregnancy for those same reasons, for the manipulation.
Absolutely.
Her lesson to Sansa about, women's weapons. I mean, she talks about tears and she talks about sex, and really pregnancy is another aspect of femininity that she could be weaponizing in some way.
Absolutely. Like Euron, if she's afraid of Euron turning on her, one thing he will not do is turn on her while she's pregnant with a kid that she thinks is his. And that's the key, right? He thinks it's his. That's a big key, isn't it?
Yeah. So in spite of, we had this whole conversation, but then I saw you talking about, this idea that she's trying to pass the child off as Euron's, and honestly, that makes so much sense because she's done this before. It's her MO, right? Which then made me wonder, if she's pregnant in the books, who will she name as the father? Because she kind of arrogantly goes around saying that, I can be with Jaime because for whatever, I can do whatever I want. But I mean, is she really gonna just say, well, yeah, it's Jaime's kid?
Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder about that. Yeah, maybe she will. Maybe she doesn't have much choice. Like the alternative, you raise a great question. What is the alternative? Who else can she name as the father? Yeah, wow, good point.
Kettle Black. I mean, that doesn't say.
But the book also has foreshadowing for Cersei losing a baby, potentially. Of course, almost multiple foreshadowings for it, really. The main one being the Valonqar says she'll have 3 kids, so that means she can't have another kid if the Valonqar prophecy is accurate in the books, which I have no reason to doubt. Second of all, there's that scene where she's served breakfast and she cracks an egg open and it's a bloody half-formed chick, which is like that's a stillbirth kind of thingy. So the idea of her being pregnant in the books, very solid, but the idea that a baby's actually born, very unlikely, I think. Now, here's another thought here. I'm not going to get into this, just want to reference it because we're short on time. We talked quite a bit about Cersei's parallels to Rhaena, the Queen in the West, during our Fire and Blood coverage, so I do recommend you all check that out. And we'll probably have more thoughts on that as this plot line develops, as we see what happens with her and Euron and other things as the season moves forward. So we can come back to that later. Another season. Another week.
We get more mention of the fact that there were no Golden Company elephants, right? And obviously there's been lots of memes about this. But at Drafturgy, who you remember did all of that sea snake art for us and has other lovely art as well, points out that the sea snake, I started doing it on accident, that the sea snake's elephants did not fare well during long sea travel, and so there is precedent for this.
It's true. It is at least supported historically, yes. And it makes sense, too. Why would, elephants on ships? Yeah, it sounds pretty bad. For the same reason that this Euron plot is just developing as far as how things are going, we'll go ahead and hold off on discussing him for now. But we will say that the idea of Euron marrying Cersei is not new in the books, nor is the idea of him having a kid with him. Because one thing we know for sure, Euron wants Daenerys in the books, but what happens when he fails? One of the main reasons he wants Daenerys isn't just the dragons, is he wants an heir worthy of his goals. And if he can't get an heir off of Daenerys, then, well, Queen Cersei is a pretty good, second prize.
She'd love to hear that.
Yeah, right?
God, she would hate prize. That. I know, Cersei's like, you do not say that about me.
Wildfire to you.
Yeah. Qyburn's another one. We'll hold off on talking about too much today. I just want to say that it was interesting that he seemed genuinely concerned about the wall falling. So, we'll have to see what happens there. So let's talk about Last Hearth. Ashaya is going to put up a shot of the map here. We got you can see Last Hearth clearly.
Coming from Eastwatch by the sea.
Yeah.
Just because in the show that is where they came from.
Yeah.
And you can see they're going down to Winterfell, but we have questions of whether they'll, want to branch off towards any of these other locations at all, whether in the book specifically, but also in the show and the islands, and whether they can get to those islands that we see off the coast. So hopefully that's somewhat clear to anyone viewing.
One thing Fire and Blood mentioned, highly relevant, probably not for the show at this point because it doesn't seem to matter. But for the books, they talk about the sea freezing in Fire and Blood. So I don't know if it's going to freeze. Like Ashaya said, it seems kind of unlikely for the sea to freeze all the way to Skagos, but it's not impossible. But more likely we'll see rivers freeze over. The Last River and the White Knife, things like that. That's a lot more likely to freeze over. So in the books, we can hope that Dolorous Ed and Tormund are still alive at this point. Tormund is a fairly different character in the books, but maybe not super different. He's just older and has kids and stuff, but he's still kind of a similar kind of like funny guy that still fights really well that Jon likes. And yeah, I don't know. It's still fairly similar. So Last Hearth makes sense though for their first target in the books as well. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah. Post the wall. I mean, it's really the next
big thing, other than them like heading Molestown or something.
Yes.
Yeah. Oof, yeah, poor Molestown. They got attacked by wildlings. Now this is far worse. And something I alluded to earlier, one clear difference is this probably isn't a huge factor for how this plotline can go, but Great Jon is still alive in the books, although he is a captive, and Small Jon is dead. So it's the opposite of the show where Small Jon turned traitor. We can't have that in the books. Small Jon is dead, and the idea of Great Jon turning on the Starks is just unfathomable, really. But there are these other Umbers, Moors and Hother, who are absolutely active right now, and one of them could turn on the Starks, potentially. We could get that Rickon plot that way, but I just don't think so, because that's got Davos involved. And anyway, we have a note here about that you mentioned, Ashaya, in the beginning, the spiral thing for Last Hearth.
No, that's not a thing in the books that we know of. It's specifically a thing that they mention, how they threw that in. Like, they asked the showrunners if they could do it, and they were like, yeah, great idea. We love that little Easter egg, you know? Yeah. So it was the people who made it who did this. But yeah, so it was interesting if there's some actual significance to Last Hearth. But no, I don't think there is.
Lady Gwyn, what do you think about this Umber scene to this point?
Well, I mean, in terms of the show, when they sent little Ned Umber back to little Lord Umber, come back and get your people, and I felt like I had this kind of, what I call the uh-oh feeling, but I didn't really think about it that clearly. But now knowing what we know about the intro part, I think we should have been more of the DEFCON level of he's dead meat. They
have this little kid cutely poke his head out from around the corner of the big dude. Of course that kid's gonna die.
Disheveled looking. He was really cute kid.
Just like little. Oh, he was adorable, and I didn't really give him a second thought other than like, oh, that seems weird.
Yeah.
Just send that kid off by himself. Well, I don't know, but so I think what we have to just worry about is anyone who's in that path.
And so we saw Alice Karstark. She made it to Winterfell. Not that I mean, Winterfell seems like there's an imminent threat of its own, but she did make it to Winterfell. And but meanwhile, like Robert Glover, he doesn't, like he stays in his keep in that scene we talked about earlier. So I am wondering if we'll specifically see a scene of him being killed or fallout reaction or anything like that. But Alice Karstark, a little neat little parallel scene for me was we see Alice arrive when Tyrion is commenting on the Karstark sigil, and this is a little similarity to he did the same thing with Podrick and Bronn when they were awaiting the Dornish contingent, just critiquing sigils, talking about sigils and what and he says he specifically compliments the Karstark sigil.
Yeah. That's kind of funny.
Sigil. Tyrion is a sigil aficionado, I think.
Yeah, there's that scene in the books where he's asking Pod to name all the sigils from the Dornishmen or whatever.
Yeah,
and
it's in the show too. But yeah.
Oh, that's true. You're right. It's in both. But the particular line is not in the show, which is that Tyrion says out loud, "I couldn't have named them all myself," and he was lying. He could have. He just wanted Podrick to feel nice.
Oh yeah. Another interesting thing about this Little Lord Umber scene is that Paula Fairfield, that is the noise designer for the show. Noise designer. And I just mixed up her Noise Girl as her name on Twitter.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
Noise Girl, that's right.
And that's why I just was going to say @noise, but I was like, I should just say whatever. But she sampled some different people, different fans for the screeching sounds that Little Lord Umber made, including Sam from Burlington Bar and whatnot, @Kinda Cool, who we know from Con of Thrones and that sort of thing. But that's what they do, is they mix and sample a bunch of screeches to make one otherworldly, ridiculous screech. So it's pretty cool.
So let's moving forward in this scene here. That's a good take by Ashaya there. We have the discovery. They've run into, you get the vibes from season 1, episode 1 that resolve in this kind of horror moment here. As far as the symbol and the burning of the symbol, that is something we're going to talk about on Saturday. We'll have LML as a guest, and we're going to get into that. So we're not going to, given our short time here, we won't talk about it now. But just FYI, join us on Saturday for a very full discussion of that. It's a very good theory, very interesting, good thoughts that apply both to the books and show. But for now... who's
the art coordinator for the White Walkers, eh?
Yeah, right.
Like, which one has that role in particular where they're like, okay, we're gonna place this leg here and these are gonna be all arms,
I see a couple people in the chat have mentioned how there's some vibes to the creation of the Night King in that scene, like how he was pinned down and held down and then impaled, sort of, which is what Ned Umber has happened to him in this scene. He's
Night King wants reparations.
Yeah, he's
what
mad
happened
about
to him. He wants to be restored to being a human, and he wants people to know this was a terrible travesty.
Maybe he's suffering and he wants to be put out of his misery.
Yeah, it's just like the lion with the thorn in his paw.
Poor Night King. He's just misunderstood.
He's just got a thorn in his chest or whatever they inserted the dragon.
You see those ridges coming out of his head. That's painful.
He just needs some help.
Begging someone to kill him. Please, it's been 10,000 years.
I can't see the sun. Okay, so...
you want to go through some of these parallels?
Yeah, let's do this real quickly. Run through these parallels,
alternate, I do one set, and then you do one set, and then Lady Gwyn or something?
Okay, sure. So here are all the episode 1, season 1 parallels to this episode.
Okay, season 1. Bran climbs tower to see King Robert arriving. Season 8. Young boy climbs tree to see Queen Daenerys arriving.
Season 1, Arya joins crowd to watch procession arrive. She sees the Hound. Season 8, Arya joins crowd to watch procession arrive. She sees Sandor.
Season 1, King and Queen meet Starks lined up in courtyard. Ned says, Winterfell is yours. Catelyn asks, where's Arya? Season 8, King and Queen meet Starks lined up in courtyard. Sansa says, Winterfell is yours. Jon asks, where's Arya?
Season 1, best friends talk in the crypts about Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen. Season 8, best friends talk in the crypts about Lyanna and Rhaegar.
Nice. Season 1, 2 Starks, male and female, talk by the werewood, Ned and Catelyn. Season 8, 2 Starks, male and female, talk by the werewood, Jon and Arya.
Season 1, a potential marriage is discussed. Sansa and Joffrey and Dany and Drogo. Season 8, a potential marriage is discussed. Dany and Jon.
Yes, and in both cases, it's not
it's
someone
not-
else
it's
discussing someone else's marriage.
theirs.
Yeah,
They don't
it's
have
an
their own
arrangement.
agency in it. That's true. Season 1, Jon makes a new animal friend, Ghost. Season 8, Jon makes a new animal friend, Rhaegal.
Nice.
So on you, Aziz.
Oh yeah, season 1, Dany rides her silver for the first time. Season 8, Jon rides his dragon for the first time.
Season 1, White Walker are out of body parts. Child White. Season 8, White Walker are out of body parts. Child White.
Oh, to add to that one, in both
Oh,
times it's behind the person who's the
yeah,
camera's
they're
focused on, and they like turn around and there's a child White.
Yeah, right.
Season 1, Tyrion is upset with Jaime for not knowing when to knock when getting busy. Season 8, Bronn is upset with Qyburn for not knowing when to knock when getting busy.
That's funny. I just reduced it to brothel scene, but you're right. It's more. It's even closer than that.
Interrupt him. You, Aziz?
Season 1, Jaime's appearance is concealed and then revealed. Helmet. He pulls his helmet off in that moment. Yeah, and then season 8, Jaime's appearance is concealed and then revealed with a hood.
Of course, season 1 ends with Bran and Jaime. Season 8 ends with Bran and Jaime.
And season 1, a theme of execution and the rights of a lord or queen to do so. And season 8 has a theme of execution and the rights of a lord or queen to do so.
Good call. Season 1. Go ahead.
Season 1, incest, Jaime and Cersei. Season 8, incest, Jon and Dany.
Yeah, right near the end of the episode too. That's pretty
gross.
cool. Also, from episode 2, season 1, episode 2, Jon says goodbye to Bran via forehead kiss, and season 8, Jon says hello to Bran via forehead kiss. And then also, Jon says goodbye to Arya, gives her a big hug, in which he picks her up and gives her Needle. And in season 8, Jon says hello to Arya, gives her a big hug, in which he picks her up, and then they talk about Needle.
So, well, it's quite a lot.
Pretty good,
A lot. So
Yeah.
I thought that was a neat thing.
Way more than I thought. Like, Sean and I rattle off maybe half of those, and some of those we didn't get the full detail on. So, good job. Good jorb. Okay, well, let's say some thanks. Sometimes we'll do good, bad, and the ugly. Sometimes we'll do Worry of the Week, but we won't this time. Worry of the Week probably hasn't changed much from our preseason predictions.
Yeah.
And good, bad, and the ugly, we'll just have to skip that because we have taken too much time. So
We're
let
at
us
2.5 hours.
yeah, let's do some shout outs for thanks and stuff. Thank you, Lady Gwyn, for coming. We'll see you next Wednesday as well, right?
Yes, we will.
Excellente.
And
Every
we'll
time.
see her in person
Yes,
at Ice and
we
Fire
will.
Con.
Oh, I will see you next Wednesday and then next Thursday. Yes, I will.
See you some
Very next day. We'll see you in person.
I know. We have a panel together and everything.
Yep.
Gwyn and I do.
That's right. Yep. Thursday. Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. It's so crazy. Don't even remind me. Don't remind me.
No,
God.
next Wednesday we can't go this late. I have to leave at 5 a.m.
Oh God, yeah, I feel you there.
Boy, that's a whole different consideration, isn't it?
Someone brings up the idea of Jaime pushing Bran in his chair.
Yeah, just pushing his chair over.
No, just like idea of him just like pushing him around the courtyard. He's pushing Bran.
Kind of pushing.
That's your punishment. You have to wheel him around.
Katie Oski, that's a funny idea.
That was one of the memes going around. Like, how is he getting her? Like, is
like
Winterfell really like set up for
handicap accessible?
Wheelchair accessible. Yeah, how's he doing that? Okay, so thanks, y'all. Thanks to everyone who watched us live. Thanks to all the super chatting. Thanks for all the great questions. Thanks to all our patrons. Thanks to Michael Klarfeld for the video intro, and check out his short film, which is linked in our Facebook group.
Yeah, it's called Alone. You can find it there.
So, and of course, check out our Facebook group. You have to answer a couple of easy questions to prove you're not a bot. But that's why those questions are there. But we have lots of fantastic discussions going on about Season 8 and about other things, book stuff, and lots of discussions. Many, many good discussions are happening at all times on our Facebook group page. So let's say some thanks to some patrons. Thanks to Lord Mark of House Joseph, the Snow in Winterfell, rider of Mazla Cartho, a white dragon with green scales, horns, wings, and talons. Jinx of House Lier, Green Queen of the Rainwood, rumored daughter of a woods witch, rider of Erogenia, the sylphic albino dragon with amethyst eyes and opalescent wings, as well as our live studio audience. Peers of the realm include the mysterious BR, Hand of the King.
The Smiling Wolf, Lord Stephen Stark of the Broken Tower, soldier, scholar, philosopher, diplomat, hand of Queen Ashaya, who is known as the best.
Really sounds like he's the best with all
I
those
know,
skills,
soldier,
though.
scholar, philosopher, diplomat.
That is quite a lot of skills. That's pretty badass. Lord Jim, the fortuitous of wars and politics of Ice and Fire blog and Warden of the West. Lady Gwyn, we recorded an episode with him and Stephen Atwell recently, didn't we?
Well, we sure did. Speaking of Ice and Fire Con, it was an expansion of the panel we did with Lord Jim last year at Ice and Fire Con.
So he says he's working on editing that, so we should have an announcement on that one. A little kind of, basically kind of a bonus episode of sorts, we could call that. I don't actually know where it's going to be released, but we'll let y'all know.
The internet.
It'll be out there somewhere. On
the internet, Ashaya says. Yes, that is accurate.
Right. Yes.
Also, thanks to Lord George Stormsville the Cunning, Lord of the Chiliad and Warden of the East. Cabeth the Unfrozen, Lord of the Bricks and Castle Crimson Light, Defender of the Old Gods and Warden of the North. Thanks for the question today. Lady Kelly McMath of Covington is Lady of the Villa Hills and Crescent Springs, a Warden of the South. Lord James Tuttle is King of the Stepstones and the Narrow Sea, Commander of the Royal Fleet, consisting of the Narrow Fleet led by Flagship Caraxes and the Bloodstone Fleet led by Flagship Prince Daemon. He's a bit concerned over this news that the Narrow Sea can freeze.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
that would really screw up his business if the Narrow Sea was frozen. King Beyond the Wall, Sidney Jesse is the Fallborn, Lord of Blue Spring and the Haunted Forest, wields a dagger of dragonglass and the Valyrian steel blade Red Frost. He doesn't understand all this conundrum about Valyrian steel and dragonglass. He's proving that a person can have both. And I think Arya might be going to prove that as well. So maybe Sidney Jesse and Arya Stark will commiserate over weaponry. They can discuss their Arsenals. Our small council is led by, or rather includes Lord Daniel, the Sneaky Russian, Master of Ships, Grand Maester Via James, Lord Benjen of House Hornwood, Master of Laws, Lord Fabian Flowers, the Bastard of Greenshield, Master of Coin, and Lord Johan of House Orcos, who is called Shadowhawk and Master of Whispers. Lords and ladies in their castles include Lady Direliz of Castle Naki, the Alpha Patron, Lord Dan of the Red Mountains and Castle Great Bell, Breaker of the Second Stone. I believe we saw Dan in the chat today. Lord Skip of the Veldt is Lord of Castle Ganges. Gregor the Toasty is Lord of the Bread Fort. Alicia Everlasting of the Green Blood is Lady of Desert Rose. Lord Ryan of Castle Stonegate is Guardian of the Rocky Mountain Pass. Lord Garin de Haviland is of Devil's Hand Keep. Ashlyn Winter is the Hawk's Eye, Lady of Castle Skyfall. Lady Mikkel of Moonacre is leader of the Werewood Protectorate Alliance. The Lord of the Halls of Castle Hillcrest is wielder of the Valyrian Steel Machete Everglazed. Lord Alistair Whitaker is Lord of the Dawnhold. Lord Bemmy Snugglebunny is Guardian Ranger of the Hidden 100-Acre Werewood. Brian the Defender is Lord of the Spearfort and the Freelands, last scion of Clan McCulloch. The Bastard of the Wolfswood is First Forester of the Old Gods, sworn to House Iron Werewood. Connor the Dungeon Master is Lord of Catamount Keep and Guardian of the Smoky Mountain Pass. Lady Baelish is Dark Widow of Harrenhal. Nevesta the Twin-Hearted, suspected skin changer, is holder of Castle Carahelm. Sir Valentin of House Degen is creator of the free Game of Thrones Predictions Market. Lady Lyanna Kelly of Wolf Island is protectress of the Steelhold. Casey Stark of House Acres. Lady Kay of House Archer is Lady of Earthdog Hall, huntress of the Wolfswood, and guardian of Maddie Squirrel's Bane, the mighty Direweenie. Lady Raywin is of House Dilsdane, the Star Spear. And Peter Rivers is the Pale Dragon and heir to Bloodraven. Our King's Justice is Sir Troy the Steady, wielder of the Valyrian Steel Blade Fate. I need to read these for Ashaya because I forgot to update them. We have Bloody Ben Blackwood, Master of Whisperers. Rebea Star Eyes is Lady of Waves and Mistress of Ships, Captain of the Iron Shadowcat. In the shadows we bear our claws, and she has responded to Denise of Lezar's challenge and is currently backed by such luminaries as Gregor the Toasty, Lord of the Breadfort. And she has accepted this challenge and asks what kind of lead Master of Laws just abandons the council and flees to foreign lands. We'll have to find out his response to that. Dennis of Lazar is our former Master of Laws, but now head of the Cell Company, the Fiery Shepherds, and a Sea Lord in his own right. Grand Maester Elizabeth is middle daughter of Lyanna Mormont, First Lady to forge both the Silver and Valyria Steel links. Our Master of Coin is Lady Laura, the Green Willa. That's not your full name. I'm still working on it. We got to come up with a cool name for Laura. It's too fun to take lightly, but so far I haven't been inspired. I don't know about you guys, but I do all my naming
You'll be
like in
inspired.
batches. I'll have like a
You'll be
week or two
inspired
go
when you
by
see
where I
one
do no
person.
names, and then I just have like I do like 10 or 12 in one day where I'm inspired. But all this hype of
Yeah.
season 8 has slowed me down a little bit. But it's coming. It's coming.
Oh.
Our Lord Commander is Miriam R., backed up by Sir Dolorous D., longest tenured White Sword, Willa Crowsbane, Sir Dean the White, Sir Jord of House Pepsi, and Gregor Snow called Snowbear. And we have our Queen's Guard.
Okay. Lord Captain Commander, you have to read this.
Oh.
I'm in so much pain right now. Aziz.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. We have Lord Captain Commander Hema Helminth, the Sellsword Sentinel. Alexander of House Atreides from the Seat of Dune. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Becca the Bard is Songbird of the North. Michonne the Melodious is Star of Old Town, Minds Over Masters. Sir Rambo is Knight of House Gannon, First Blood. Sir Leon of House Walker is wielder of the twin Valyrian steel blades Fire and Ice and the Werewood Bow Rain. Amber the Adamant is the Knight of the Mist and Mother of Squids. Lord Commander George the Golden leads the Beard Guard, backed up by Sir Joshua Oakhart the White Oak, Lady Rita of the Coppermane, the Unbound, Sir Jeff, Warden of the AC, wielder of Triad, Sir Tim Corgyle, Mad Boy of the Western Desert, and Queen Helena von Landstein, partying like it's 1999 since 1980-something. Last but not least, our History of Westeros Night's Watch is led by Lord Commander Benjen Umber, the Silent Giant, wielder of the Valyrian Steel Greatsword Winter's Kiss, First Builder Magor Snow, a.k.a. Magor the Cool, the Fire in the Snow, First Steward Sir Jurion of the Torrentine, called Pale Wind, and First Ranger Sir Source Delica of House Gramercy. Thanks again, everyone, for showing up. Well, hopefully we don't keep Shaya's tailbone hurting too much next week.
Let's not go for close to 3 hours.
Yeah, right?
After I had to sit for hours today already.
Okay, so, and thanks to Lady Gwyn from Radio Westeros. We'll see you next week as well.
Next week. Yeah.
All right, everybody. Valar, reread us.